Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to the stream. Hello, hello, hello to you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's your sleep-deprived Cell Phi here, and today we are going to be doing a guerrilla stream where we are going to be making some sort of game. Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. Welcome Clockwork and the Wolf and Nicholas and Neutrophil Mapping. Hello, one to you all. Today, so let me tell you all a little story before I get into announcements and the like. So I had a boba tea at 1 p.m. yesterday, and I am what you would call a very caffeine efficient person. And I was unable to sleep the entire night. Hello, welcome, Mylan, welcome in. And so in my sleep-deprived haze at 3 a.m. in the morning, I was given a vision for a game about evolution that actually follows evolutionary principles. And I'll get into what that means in just a second, but first I have some announcements. So if you are an educational STEM VTuber, we are taking in more members for V-Theorem. So for those of you who don't know, I am a part of a VTuber group where we all do STEM education as part of our content. And so we are looking to get more people on board with that. So look out for that. That's very exciting. Some other announcements. I have my 1-year anniversary coming up on Sunday. Yeah, it's been a whole year of me making content on this platform, and I figured it would be fun to do a little bit of celebration, a little bit of eating cake and looking back at all the fond memories of all the content that has been made. Hello, welcome to you all. It's going to be a really special stream that I'm going to have a lot of fun with. I'm going to be talking about old collabs and reflecting on my interactions with all the lovely people that have made content with me, and looking forward to what I have planned for the future. I think it's going to be pretty great. 23k subs in a year is pretty good. I would say so. It's surely... I certainly have exceeded my own expectations for how long it would take for this channel to get off the ground, and for that I have to thank the YouTube algorithm. Shout out to the YouTube algorithm. Thank you. So we'll have some good feelings there. And then right after the 1-year anniversary stream, I have a members only stream where we are going to be watching my first video that I uploaded on this channel before it was called Phi the Neutrophil. So long-term viewers of my channel may have seen me talk a whole stream about my creative failures, but I've actually made a ton of content before settling on Phi the Neutrophil. This one is about a probiotic that claims to, let's just say, augment some man parts, we'll say. So it is my strict policy to not gatekeep education behind a paywall. However, this information actually isn't very new at all. I've actually redid the script for the kombucha video. So all of the scientific information that you would have found in this first video is in that kombucha video. It's just I spend a lot more time breaking down on the marketing practices of this particular probiotic. And it's a very different style than I ended up with. So I figured it would be fun to watch it with the members. So those are my announcements. And with that, let's get into talking a little bit about this vision I had. Okay, so here's the thing. Okay. Oh God, I forgot to remove all of the click to add titles. Here's the thing, right? There are a lot of games about evolution on the market, right? The most famous one being Spore. But the thing that these evolution games have in common, and the thing that is inaccurate from a biological point of view, is that the player has some agency. So evolution is not directed. At least evolution in nature is not directed. At least, you know what? Let me back up. You don't need a model of guided evolution to believe in a natural origin for the species, right? So it is an aspect you can believe in guided evolution, but you don't have to, right? So if we take the assumption that the world and its life forms arise naturally without some divine sort of guidance, we don't currently have a video game that allows us to simulate that sort of situation. Because again, Spore, you manually do things like increase the length of a species, change the number of eyes, change the number of body parts, but that's not how evolution works. This game that I have in mind is something that is a lot more representative, we'll say, of how evolution really works, and that involves a lot of death. So I call this game Spawn Then Die. And so we're going to get into sort of coming together. We'll chat about this, chat. So I came up with the idea, but you and we can hash out exactly how this game will work, and then over the course of several years, maybe, I'll make this in Python at some point, because this is something that I can actually do with my one intro class to Python, I believe. I think we can do it. All right, chat? So this is going to be pretty fun, I think. Oh my God, evolutionary roguelike? Exactly, except you have very little agency. I'll offer it out for free. It's going to be like mostly text based. This is not going to be very complicated, as you'll see. Okay, so Spawn Then Die, isn't that basically Overwatch? Very true. And TF2, except unlike TF2 for me, you have a chance of getting better the next time you respawn. Okay, so what is the objective? We'll do this out together. The objective is to start as an assemblage of organic material, and you win the game by evolving multicellularism. So that's kind of my goal, right? So the beginning is you don't even start off as something that can be considered alive. You actually start in the chemical evolution phase. And then when you finish the game, the ending of the game, if you get there successfully, which will be very difficult, as we will see, is when you evolve a trait where you as a cell will be able to cooperate with other cells. So I purposely didn't want to go into multicellularism because then things get very complicated. It gets out of my expertise. Then we start thinking about ecology. Guys, we're going to get so many cells. Exactly, Mylan. This is going to involve a lot of death, just as evolution had intended, right? Spore, there's not a lot of death in there. I mean, sometimes you'll fail, but real evolution happens over time, agonizing time. So those are the objectives. And actually, since this will be a little more of a chill stream, let's go ahead and get some lo-fi on, and let me know if the music needs adjusting in terms of the audio. So what are the player mechanics? Okay, so what do I envision the player being able to do? So I envision something like a picture of a cell. This is the UI, very, very advanced, I know. Let's get rid of this text box. So this is you, this is your cell. And what I imagine this to look like is you have a button And this button says respawn. Because evolutionary life, even if you live, you eventually die. So there's going to be a respawn button. Okay? And then underneath that, there's going to be a save button, save state, so that you don't have to reload a particular element. So this is the extent. This is the extent by which you have agency as a player, right? I see those PowerPoint buttons fight. Yeah, you know, I don't lie. I am a slave to the Microsoft Office system. You need to evolve a form of replication, exactly. But we're going to start as an assemblage of organic molecules, so it's going to be agonizing. So basically, these are your two buttons. This is how you play. You'll respawn continually until you evolve something that works, and when you find something you like, you can save a state. Oh, actually, this should be save and reload. There'll be exactly one save state. No multiple save files. Okay, so yeah, so this is how you will play. Not very fun, I know, but this isn't meant to be fun. This is meant to be accurate. So, this game happens in several stages, right? So, before we actually form a cell, we actually have to first talk a little bit about the hidden mechanics. Okay? This game is going to be agonizing? Exactly. Like, this is not going to be fun. It is going to be absolute misery, just like Darwin had intended. So how do we actually evolve in this game? So we'll go over something, a hidden mechanic called fitness. So this is a measurement by which it's actually statistically defined, or not statistically, but numerically defined in evolutionary theory as, and I'm going to get it wrong because it's been a very long time since I've learned about evolution in a formal context. Instead, what I was doing before stream was playing Final Fantasy X. My love of randomizers is taking great delight in this. I know. It feels the gacha crowd. Evolution is gacha. Evolution is gacha. And you, as someone who is alive in this day and age, are an SSS gacha. You know, you are the cream of the crop, ultra rare gacha pull. No matter what you think of your own body, you are, evolutionary speaking, a marvelous success. But the majority of things that have lived are not, so this is meant to simulate that amount of pain. So what is fitness? So fitness, unlike, you know, it's not muscles, it's actually the ability, we'll simplify this and maybe cut corners for evolution people that might get on me for this, but it's basically the ability for an organism to survive in an environment and pass off its genes. Okay, so fitness, and if you've watched my evolution content before, doesn't mean like strong or big muscles, but it means fit. Like if you have a square hole and you have a square peg, that square peg is fit for that environment. Souls-like Spore, yeah. Exactly. Is this a gambling clicker game? Ooh, I don't know if it's really gambling. I think it's just you have no control and it's existential dread. Fit as in the if I fits, I sits meme. Exactly. So it's the ability of an organism to fit within its environment, which is why all these red pill alpha dudes, when they talk about fitness and they ruin evolution for everybody else by claiming that being an alpha male is what makes you evolutionary fit, that's not necessarily true, because there are different boxes and people are very complicated and society is very complicated. Sure, Mylan can tell you more about that, but in essence, there's going to be an environment as well. So you can't have fitness without environment. You can't have environment in an evolutionarily meaningful manner without fitness. But this is the first mechanic, is some metric of fitness. And so this is probably going to be maybe a list of variables. So we can think of some right now. Maybe metabolism. Or no, fitness, we'll say, okay, let's do a word cloud, because I haven't planned everything out. So let's brainstorm together. What would count as something that would affect a cell's fitness? Let's see, if food source equals abundant, that's plus fitness. If food source is rare, minus fitness. If strong predator, minus fitness. And then we'll come up with some numerical way to make this make more sense later. I'm just listing out things just to brainstorm before putting this into actual pseudocode. Size, shape, reliability. Those are, I don't really know how well those would translate into something simple like what I'm planning. Size and shape definitely matter, but how would that? Okay, so size can affect fitness, and this will maybe more indicate niche. If strong predator, that's minus fitness. Yeah, so size. So okay, so these are like, so the things that every organism will have to contend with is a food source, right? Like just thinking basic cells, you need food source, and so this will be the easiest to code, I think. Like some, you know, programming loop where if the value for this particular food source that you happen to be using is high, then that is bonus to your fitness. If it's low, then it's a minus to your fitness. And so the fitness is a value between 0 and 1. And so the way that this would work in an actual like evolution class is that there's some variable reproduction rate times fitness equals respawn population. So every time you click this respawn button, there's going to be a calculation that combines all of the things that factor into a fitness calculation and determine what the size of the next generation is. So if the environment changes on you and your fitness lowers, then this equation is going to lower the respawn population. So you can have increases in population and decreases in population. Let's see what else we got. Boba tea drinking ability. If that were the case, I would be weeded out of the evolutionary gene pool right away. Replicatability. That's a great idea, Clockwork. I actually don't know whether or not replicatability is a metric of fitness outside of the reproduction rate. Yeah, so I'll have to think about that in terms of whether or not that would make sense. Temperature definitely does factor in. You can have cold adapted and hot adapted, so we'll say here. So size can affect niche, temperature can affect niche. Okay, so these niches, so the reason why I'm separating niches and fitness is because they're kind of different things, right? So fitness, again, is very broad, and the things that are most easily factorable in a calculation of fitness are going to be food abundance and whether or not you're predated upon. Things like temperature, because you can have organisms that have adapted to high temperature and low temperature, we'll call those things that form niches. I think that's smart. Symbiosis, that is going to be towards end game, so we'll have to think about where to fit that in. But I'm hoping that you can kind of see where I'm getting at here. What about competing species? Although maybe that factors into food source availability. Yeah, we actually have a different slide to think about how we can code for competing species. Can the cell become eukaryotic like an amoeba, or is it just prokaryotic? So the game ends when you evolve multicellularity. Whether or not that is a single cell or a cell that has successfully phagocytosed another, I think both are good points to end the game, because then it gets way too complicated. Acidity of the environment, that is interesting. Yeah, so pH, that can affect niche. So maybe we'll have a slide just for niche, because I think for fitness, it's just these three: food source and predation. And then in terms of like sub-evolution or classes, ooh, this really is a Souls-like. Rename food to resource, that makes sense. I agree with that. If resource. So let's restructure this. So let's do this. Okay, so let's do this. Fitness calculation equals all the things that factor into fitness. So we'll just say for now this is food source, resource, abundance, plus predation factor or something plus niche interactions. Okay, I like that. I like that. We're getting some. We're cooking, chat. We're cooking. So niche interactions. So we'll define niches, and you guys came up with some good ones. So we'll do pH as a niche. We'll do temperature as a niche. What else did we see? How amount of water? This entire game will play in water. We're playing early development of life. Size and shape. So shape is a little complicated. We're just going to assume amoeboids, but we'll do size. I think that makes sense. Welcome in to those of you who are just joining us. We are designing a game, a real game, that is realistically based on evolution. Can you add a randomizer for external catastrophic events? Ooh, you know, the thing is that we are going to be doing that just in a couple of slides. So for a single-celled organism, pH, temperature, size, yeah, I like that. Yeah. Okay, so hidden mechanics, mutations. So obviously this is a game about evolution, so there's going to be a mutation rate. So we'll say that for mutation rate, every time you hit respawn, there's a chance you mutate. And so I think Clockwork was saying replicatability. I think this drives into that kind of a little bit, right? So there are some viruses that are very quick at mutating, they're very sneaky, but mutation doesn't necessarily mean that you are more fit, just because, you know, it's all math, right? If you mutate like crazy, you can't stabilize a genome. If you can't stabilize a genome, if you're in a stable environment and your genome is unstable, that's not great for your fitness. However, if your environment is always changing and you're always mutating, then that's pretty good too. Every time you hit respawn, there's a chance you mutate. So let's list some mutations. So better at eating, that could be one. Increase in size, better at certain pH, better at certain temperature. So I'm imagining these are like sliding scales. Sometimes you can mutate to be a bit bigger, and sometimes you can mutate to be a bit smaller. But in the end of the day, at the end of the day, if you die, then you have to reload. And I'm imagining this is like, yeah, like cookie clicker, where you gotta hit that respawn button over and over again, because most of you are going to be dying. Adapting the environment better. So that's one thing that we can do in terms of mutation rate. So more or less stable genome. I like this because you can get bigger and bigger swings of these values. And so if your genome starts to destabilize, if you start evolving ways to mutate quicker, you might not stabilize at a certain size or a certain pH, which could really hurt you depending on the niche that you find yourself in, right? Clockwork, that's too fun. RNA is your gameplay loop, but DNA is your skill tree. Actually, I think you are getting it. I thought you meant more like an actual concrete gameplay mechanic, because again, the only gameplay mechanic is you hit this respawn button and sometimes you hit save and load. But yeah, like speaking biologically, that is, I think, a pretty neat way of thinking about it. More or less stable genome. Any other things that you can mutate? Eventually, so these are like things that happen every time you hit respawn, but there's a very low chance that you evolve complexity. So what does this mean? So there are certain milestones, like the development of an organelle. But if we say organelle, then we're already out of the realm of bacteria. Yeah, photosynthesis, that's great neutrophil mapping. So let's say there's like a 0.0001% chance anytime you click the respawn button, you develop photosynthesis. And this increases in chance every time you click respawn. This is not really how life happens, right? you don't get more likely to evolve photosynthesis every time you randomly mutate something. It's like cumulative, but for the gameplay purposes, this is pretty close, right? But photosynthesis would be a big shift. Big, huge shift, huge increase in fitness, being able to access a new source. And so if you evolve photosynthesis, yeah, so let's say there's a 0.1% chance of doing that, and then phagocytosis or predation. So yeah, so this would be equally rare, I think, over time, just evolving. These huge power spikes, we can call them. Increases in chance every time you respawn. I love that. That's very interesting. Neutral/no effect mutations. Yeah, so in terms of the composite organism, every generation is going to have some amount of mutation. And so if you can imagine that there's this like sliding scale, if it like ping pongs between better at pH 5 and better at pH 6, that's basically like neutral. So it kind of goes. Completely new and bonkers meta. Now your cell is constantly facing oxidative pressure, but has more access to energy. Exactly. Like you're getting it clockwork. Like there are going to be huge milestones that are very rare that get more and more likely the more you click respawn. And I think that's pretty realistic in terms of how evolution would actually work. Again, this doesn't make this doesn't make the game more fun, but it is like the most gotcha ever. Which path would you like to take to reach multicellularity? Colony or one cell living inside the other? Exactly. So I think there are going to be two branches at endgame. Like either you start evolving things that'll let you stick. So let's say, yeah, so if you go down the predation route, the chance that you go one cell living inside the other as your endgame, I think that gets a lot higher. Multicellularity. If you don't evolve either one of these, maybe you get the multicellular ending. Right. That's interesting. So let's make a new slide, talk about pathing through the game, and then we'll talk about the environment. We'll talk about stages. Right? So you can tell that I kind of rushed this. Usually I'm very prepared, but I did have this like fever dream. So primordial soup stage. This is like when you're not even a cell. This is just rolling gacha to see if you can get lipids, RNA, and peptides in the same cell. That's one's just going to be mashing the respawn button. There's going to be nothing interesting happening there. And then we'll go single cell. And then we'll go complexity. And then endgame. This is... That's outside the PowerPoint. Makes these a little smaller. Primordial soup. We'll just redo these. Sporeful was a gacha game? Exactly. That's what I'm here for. Cell stage. Don't get me wrong, I like Spore, but in terms of like the pain and tragedy of evolution, it's not nearly painful or tragic enough. Complexity. So this is the route that we would take, and each one of these will have different milestones once you reach them. Like you might be stuck in primordial soup forever, right? There's no guaranteed progression. Like you have to roll very lucky to get out of here, and then you have to keep rolling lucky forever. Spore's like, yeah, exactly. It's kind of a fun idea, I think. Okay, but before we can get there, we have to finish thinking about mechanics. So environment. So the environment is going to be list of values in an environment. Temperature, pH. So even if you happen to spec down being like a hot, high temperature thermophile, if your environment all of a sudden shifts, it makes sense that all of you would die, right? Temperature, pH. So we'll do a couple of different values here. Temperature, pH, and then each one of the stages are going to have a different food source. So this is primordial soup. So this is going to be things like sulfur. So I'm not an early life expert. Sulfur's a big one though. Salinity. That is an interesting one. Salinity I like. Only Fi is gonna make a game, but explicitly make it not fun to start. Oh, it's not gonna be fun ever. This is gonna suck forever. Oh, radiation and level of oxygen. I love that. Radiation. So this can affect mutation rate globally. I like that. I like that a lot. Level of oxygen. Yep, oxygen content. That's a really big one for, you know, our Earth. Density of other life forms. That's true. Of competitors. We'll simplify it with competitors because I just think it's a little easier to code that way. Salinity. Yeah. Level of sunlight. Yeah. We're cooking. And as like, because the early Earth was very, very cloudy, and so I like that sunlight level can change. That would make it more likely to evolve photosynthesis and keep it, right? So, yeah. So sunlight level affects the chance that photosynthesis evolves. Yeah. Okay, we're cooking. That's good. Good job, chat. Good job. Sulfur's the whole play, yeah. UV levels, sunlight levels. We'll generalize this to UV. Yeah, UV. Sulfur's the whole play, yeah. I don't really know anything else about early life, except it was very much like sulfur as a final electron acceptor for energy. Lipid concentration. Peptide concentration. Nucleic acid. You know, before we were actual cells with things to do, we were just little pockets, little fat pockets. Little fat pockets, and you have to gotcha. And as biomolecules increase in concentration in the primordial soup, the chance that you form an actual functioning cell increases. So I like that as primordial soup specific values. And then we'll go into the cell stage. So these are our cell stage. This is probably going to be something like overall organic matter. We can kind of simplify it. Sulfur is still fine. Or alt iron, maybe. Alt electron acceptors. For those of you who don't know, when you do oxidation as a cellular system... So, sorry, let me back up. In order to break stuff down, generally, there's going to be floating electrons that need to go somewhere, and so in the process of using energy, that electron is usually passed off to an oxygen in us, but in early life forms, that electron was passed off to sulfur. I believe there are metals that it was also passed off to, although again, my early abiogenesis biology is kind of weak, but I'll look into it as this idea cooks. Yeah. I love all the contribution from chat. This is really fun. CH3 levels. I think I'm going to lump that in with organic matter just because that's very specific, I would say. Could the density of life affect chance of predation evolving? That is a good idea. Affects predation evolving. Very fun, very fun. Are creatures going to be procedurally generated, or I think they'll be random for competitor stats. I have a whole slide about like thinking about competitors. Amount of fixed nitrogen. Yeah, we could do nitrogen. We could do nitrogen for sure. I think that would probably be cell stage, but I'm not entirely sure. Nitrogen. Phosphorus availability. Yeah, true. Actually, I don't know. I think sulfur and iron are different enough from phosphorus and nitrogen in terms of purpose, because I kind of lump phosphorus and nitrogen in with organic matter because that's kind of like the building blocks of stuff. But sulfur and iron are like different. They're like energy enabling, I think. I thought primordial soup is generally debunked. Life formed around hydrothermal vents. I'm using the term primordial soup very vaguely because that's what people are familiar with, but maybe it is more accurate to call it hydrothermal vent, because that is what I'm assuming with this sulfur idea, because the sulfur capturing organisms were in hydrothermal vents. So maybe we call this, I don't know, yeah, hydrothermal vent / primordial soup. I'm not an abiogenesis kind of guy, so I do have to double check everything once the programming actually starts, but this is the ideation part. Isn't phosphorus important? Yeah, it is, but I'm going to lump that in with organic matter. Water is going to be everywhere. This whole game takes place in water. Radiation, yep, that's already in there. Oxygen, yeah. So, the great when photosynthetic organisms started cropping up, they dumped a whole bunch of oxygen into the environment, and that killed a lot of organisms because oxygen is very, very dangerous, which is why oxygen percent is going to be a major factor within the environment. Carbon, I'm lumping in with organic matter. I like this. Okay. So resources we kind of did with environment. So let's remove this as a slide. Yeah, let's not deal with resources as a slide. So let's think. So these are the individual cells. Oh, I call it protocell. Yeah, that's a lot more. That's a lot more neutral, I think. So we'll add a cell. We'll add a slide. This is for competition. So actually, interestingly enough, Darwin didn't know anything about DNA, right? Darwin didn't know anything about mechanics. Darwin didn't know anything about Mendel's work in pea plants. So Darwin had no idea about genetics. Darwin's theory of evolution was actually mostly based on capitalism. Competition, mathematical models of competition, more like. But sort of his observations, as well as reading a bunch of like economic theory, is what allowed Darwin to realize that the theory of evolution can be driven by this idea of competition. So while I usually think of the environment as being a filter for fitness, Darwin's original conception was competition over resources. I think it's still fair to say that that's accurate, but it's not really the mindset that I particularly have when it comes to thinking about fitness. But that's likely because in cellular environments, we don't typically think about things like predation and fighting over a watering hole or the growth of crops or whatever. Yeah, so we'll go with competition. So no competition in the protocell phase. That's just because at that stage, it's mostly chemical evolution. Waiting for you to gotcha correctly to get lipids, nucleic acids, and peptides in the same box, I'll say. The only non-hidden mechanics is the UI. Exactly. You just keep on hitting that respawn button and hope you win. Just like evolution. Predation was more of a multicellular thing, right? Evolved just before the Cambrian, if I recall correctly. So I don't know the history of predation in bacteria, but today I learned bacteria do exhibit predation. You do have instances of bacteria consuming other bacteria, which is nuts. I mean, it's not that surprising, I guess, because as eukaryotes, there had to be predation at some point, right? Archaea had to have eaten a bacteria at some point, so it's not super duper surprising, but I just had never heard of bacteria predating on one another. How did they think heredity worked back if they didn't know about DNA? That's the wonderful thing about classic science, and I highly encourage you, if you are going to go into university and your professor starts lecturing about the history of science, to really give them a chance to say their piece, even if it is kind of boring, because in science you can only know what you can observe and what you can experiment, right? And I want to do this diversion just for a second, just because I love talking about Darwin, right? Yeah, it's crazy that Darwin didn't know about genetics before coming up with his theory. But you actually don't need a theory of genetics to have a theory of evolution. You can lump the entirety of genetics and you can summarize it as something that determines inheritance of traits. So as a scientist, anything that you don't know, you just give it a name and you make a bunch of assumptions. When we learn about evolution these days, we learn about, chromosomes, and we learn about our DNA getting passed from parent to child. And that makes sense because we know more now. But back at Darwin's time, he had to just be like, there's something that controls whether or not an organism inherits some traits. And I'm not going to worry about how that works. I'm just going to assume that it does. Darwin had issues addressing some criticism of his theory at the time. He could have if he'd known of Mendel's findings. Exactly. Like, I don't feel for Darwin. Darwin was very successful, and especially considering the fact that he had given his talks and his books at a time where religiosity and this belief that we were divinely created was at its high. And there are interpretations of religion where that is not contradictory, and that's fine if you want to believe that. But who I really do feel for is Newton, not Newton, where'd Newton come from? I really do feel for Mendel, just because Mendel's work was buried, and he died before knowing that he was basically the father of modern genetics. Newton was able to speculate about how gravity without knowing about how it actually worked. Exactly. You make observations, you draw conclusions, and you don't worry about the things that you don't know. Just as long as you can reliably prove something in a testing environment. Different enzymes that allow you to eat different organisms with different membranes. That one might be... I'll put that one as a maybe. How would I write that in? Predation. Predation gets its own skill tree. We'll add that to the predation skill tree. Enzymes for digestion. Yeah. That would be fun too, depending on how long we want to make these. So no competition in the protocell phase. Every respawn tick, there's a small chance another organism spawns into the environment, complete with its own list of traits. Every time respawn ticks, that organism also evolves. And that organism has a chance of out-evolving you. That's just how evolution works. Your population can randomly decrease, increase because of viruses. That's true. So we have to deal with the evolution of non-bacterial predation. Viral predation. Oh, that's going to be terrible to program in, though. Those are going to be very messy equilibria equations. And I don't know if I have the brain to do this successfully, but it is fun to think about how this game would work, right? I would love to finish this game. I don't know if it'll be in 2 years or 3 years, but eventually I would love to stream this game and just click the respawn button and have that be the entire stream. I think that would be so much fun. So could you lose the game if a different organism than you evolves to endgame? Oh, no. I think it's okay. I think it's okay that another organism gets there first. Just because it's going to be freaking impossible to win. I think you are probably going to have to click for many hours before you actually get to the end game. I think that's kind of the point of this simulation. And how Bennett Foddy do you want to be with it, right? How rage game do you want to be? I'll say maybe. We'll put that in the idea as a maybe. Objective. Evolve multicellularism first? Question mark? Organisms evolving along should be able to change environmental variables like oxygen percent. That's true. Oh, that's devious. I was just gonna hard code it in, but that is devious. Oh, that's so mean. That's so mean. Okay. Where would I put that? Oxygen percent. only increases at the first instance of an organism evolving photosynthesis. Oh, 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 oh. That's nuts. You should show the environmental variables in the UI. That's true, that's true. I'll put that in. So this is the UI. And here we'll put in the environmental conditions. So that's really smart. So we'll do local temperature, local pH, local salinity, local resource abundance, and this will change depending on which stage you are. Local UV. Yeah, this HUD is gonna be a mess, as Darwin intended. Different examples of abiogenesis. We'll have other organisms attempting to be spawned in. You might not even be the first, actually. Why not make it 2 buttons? One is to reproduce and one is respawn. Reproduce will bring you closer to the objective, while respawn will introduce slight mutations. Because icosahedron, that would make it more fun. This is going to be terrible. Because in evolution, right, you don't really get a choice. All you can do is try again. You don't really get another chance, you know what I mean? And this save and reload thing, this is about as much levity I'm willing to give to the player, in case, because the save and reload makes this possible to play. Because if you're just jamming on that respawn button in the protocell stage where you're hoping to get the triple hit of lipid, nucleic acid, and peptide, you would be playing forever. So the idea is the save and reload makes this game possible but not likely to win. Genome stability is a reference to something like rapid mutation rate. Correct. That is why I have that in there. What else do we have? Local resource abundance, local UV. I like this idea. Chat's so full of good ideas. A number of other organisms, that would be local O2, and then number of other organisms in. Yeah. I like this. Oh, by the way, if anybody else wants to make this game, I don't care. Again, this is very me in terms of my preference for brain food. Is I'm very much into the thinking, very much not into the building aspect. But I think if like Toxo is ever away and I feel like having a stream and I haven't had anything prepared, the process of building this over like the course of years could be quite fun. It's not my preferred style of content because I'm a bad programmer. I just really want this to exist. Speciation. A new organism spawns it as just a mutated version of your cell. Oh. Interesting. So let's put that under this complexity measurement. So speciation. If they win, you don't win. It's technically a different line. We'll keep that there. We'll think about it. Okay. Can't wait for the historically accurate evolution game speedruns. Yeah. I can't wait for them to run this at GDQ for 72 hours. Trading off players. That would be really funny. Protocell stage. So there are basically just 3 things that need to work here. So yeah, 3 things needed to complete this stage. First thing is lipid. Second thing is nucleic acid. Third thing is peptide. In terms of theories of abiogenesis, again, I'm not super well read. There's like the RNA world theory where the first ingredient that you need is a self-replicating molecule. So something like RNA that can, at least theoretically, produce copies of itself, you know, probably with the help of some peptides or some short chain peptides. There should be an achievement for evolving into a crab. I would love, don't get me wrong, I would love to make this a full thing through eukaryotes, but the number of variables would be crazy. Although, like, it can be fun to have like different procedurally generated little images of bacteria, and maybe one of them can be like a crab thing, and then that would give you an achievement or something. That could be fun. Sliding scale of generalist versus specialist, that's kind of already built into the idea. I kind of want the natural evolution to decide that for you, right? Let's see. Maybe flagella instead. Yeah, like if you happen to like randomly evolve 2 flagella on opposite sides that are crab-like, that could be kind of fun. How multi-cell will be like random tissue or organs form? No, I literally mean like if you get to amoeba, like multiple cells cooperating in some kind of way, that I think we can end the game there. Where was I? Yeah, okay, so lipid, nucleic acid, peptide. Okay, so every tick of respawn rolls a dice, rolls several dice, rolls 3 dice to determine if lipid, if nucleic acid, if peptide, and if not all 3, then you die and you lose. Every tick also increment lipid, Na, peptide concentration by a tiny amount. Rolling dice, that's kind of literal. I really mean generate random number. If lipid, if it, okay, yeah, increase peptide concentration by a tiny amount, which increases lipid Na peptide by a random tiny amount. Random tiny amount increases peptide chance. Okay, so protocell should be pretty easy. A respawn counter would be hilarious. A respawn counter would be so funny. Oh, I'm having a lot of fun, chat. Respawn counter. Failed lineages. I love that. That's really funny. Could plasmids be picked up randomly, giving you extra mutations? Okay, so chat. Keep these in mind. Keep the. I think so, but I'm going through these step by step because I wanna get to everything. I like what you're all saying though, because those can be like very, very low chance, like event triggers, right? You get a pop-up that says, oh, you picked up a plasmid, and then you get a bunch more mutations, right? Those are all great ideas. I want everybody to keep them in mind, and then when I move to the like event deck, then we can start putting down ideas for an event deck. I don't think there's going to be an event deck for the protocell stage. It's really just figuring out if you manage to form a cell. Yeah, I think that's fair, right? I mean, there's stuff before this too, but in terms of when a game would reasonably start, I think this is a reasonable start for a game about life. Okay, so that's easy. So that's the protocell stage. Don't need to do too much about that. Cell stage, now we get a little more complicated. So now we have to do all of these variables. Temperature, pH, radiation, density of competitors, salinity, UV level, viral predation, and then the cell stage specific stuff. I'm just copying this over for my own note keeping. Okay, so now we get the full HUD. We get to worry about everything because honestly, things like temperature and pH, those are gonna affect the protocell stage. Oh, that's so mean. That's so mean. No. Let's make this game possible. Let's make this game possible to win. We'll only account temperature and pH for when we get to slightly more complexity. So Let's make a list of things that tick every time cell stage respawn tick. Okay. Cell stage respawn tick. Let's see what updates every time we respawn and what those are. So temperature. Temperature. Okay. Temperature. Well, the Earth cooled down after the formation of the planet. I guess I would just hard code this. With some randomness to it. To model historical values. So, you know, if depending on what the temperature was like, I'll just try to keep that kind of historical because that kind of modeling, I think, goes beyond the scope of this game. pH. pH... what things affect pH? So organisms definitely affect pH. If you've ever grown cell culture and have had your precious, fragile mammalian cells contaminated by bacteria, you would know that bacteria do force the production of acids, which is bad for the cell. So, but also the mineralization of rocks can affect pH. I'll have to think more about this one. Are you going to model cell populations too? So if we're doing hydrothermal vent, we don't really have to think about overcrowding because we're in the biggest bowl of soup to ever exist. Oxygen levels and pH interacting to affect each other. We're not quite at oxygen yet, so I'm kind of doing this in order, right? Oxygen comes after the oxidation event, which will be a random event pulled by the event deck on every tick. How do I want to handle pH without oxygen in the early cell stage? Early stage should happen during the Hadean, so asteroids should be occasionally spiking the temperature. Ooh, interesting. I have really smart chatters. Okay, so I'd have to look into that. So Hadean era random spikes of temperature. Dude, that's gonna make it so hard. Maybe it should be get out of protocell stage speedrun. That's so messed up. I love that. Oh, it's so evil. This is gonna be the worst. This is gonna be the worst getting over it because you can't get better at this. That's so funny. Could other cells, if they evolve, predate, eat your cells? Yeah, they would affect your fitness. That's how that would be calculated. The hue of the cell changes depending on the fitness from purple to red. That's not a bad idea. Fitness code, color coded. I like that. I'll know what that means. I'm just waiting for the event deck. I think the event deck will be really fun. I just want to get these like nittier, grittier things done first. So we have random spikes of temperature. pH might gradually change. I'd have to read about how does pH? How did the pH of the ocean change in early life? I don't know. Have to look into that. Or maybe a smart chatter can help. What else else on that list? Radiation. Yeah, radiation. I don't know that there were extreme spikes of radiation early Earth. Maybe a sunspot. I don't know if those were like... Oh, they were high because we didn't have ozone back then. Oh, they were high. Okay, so radiation should be high. No ozone. So oxygen level affects this. Yeah. My idea is if you don't evolve with your environment in 3 respawns, the game ends. There's no way you can beat the game. It would take until after the heat death of the universe for the game to be winnable. Then you can't make the game too hard or nobody would try, right? Ozone holes? I don't know if I actually just don't know enough about early Earth to know whether or not they were like local patches of ozone dead zones. Although I'd have to look into all of this. But I think that would be cool. Oxygen percent. So oxygen doesn't matter yet. So we'll call this early game. Density of competitors affects predation evolving. Yeah. Density competitor. Carry over from protocell stage. There's probably going to be a max cap just because I don't really know how crazy the numbers are going to get or how much data we'll need to store an instance for every competitor. Like, I don't know if there'll be a way for them to balloon into the thousands. I have to kind of play it by ear. Salinity, yeah, I have to check the salinity. I actually can't really do much in terms of the salinity should increase over time because of should it though? I have to read into that. Okay, so early stage salinity, UV level, that's already done. Viral predation. Yeah, viral predation. Okay, the try-hard version of this is look up a paper for the equations that determine the equilibria between viral predation and microbiome. For those of you in the Discord, you've known that I've been thinking a lot about the microbiome and viral predation, so that's important. Organic matter. That should roughly just increase over time. Roughly increases over time, maybe settles at equilibrium. Yeah, maybe that's like something logarithmic. Yeah, I think that's fine. Sulfur and iron. Yeah, sulfur and iron will have to be here too. Check. Hydrothermal vent papers for more information. Just joined the stream. Have you heard of Thrive? I have heard of Thrive. The issue with Thrive is that it is a fun game and we're trying to make a very unfun game. So for those of you who are joining us a little later, we're making a game about evolution the way Darwin intended it, which is just to die and respawn. So this would be our UI. The only control you have is respawning and saving exactly one save state. And if you die and don't evolve, that's just it. Your run ends. And then we've got a death counter here, which is very funny. And the game takes place in 3 stages: the protocell stage, the cell stage, and then multicellularity. Now, with the cell stage respawn tick counter, you know, this is basically a very crude pseudocode. All of these values should be updated in the environment list every tick, like that. And then this will feed into a calculation on the organism's fitness. And then there's going to be a very, 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 very low chance of an event happening. I'm talking vanishingly low, clicking hundreds of times to get one of these to happen. Here we're making a new spore. Exactly. We are making a spore, but better, more accurate to biology, more or less involved. Because again, you can't pick how to evolve in evolution, right? You just are taken away by the environment and the resources. Okay, let's go event deck. All of your good ideas in chat, please let me know what you have for the event deck. One is definitely going to be evolution of photosynthesis. One of is evolution of predation. What else we got? What else we got? What else we got? What else we got? Go back and chat. Should there be an auto clicker option? Maybe. Formation of mitochondria would be the end of the game. That would be multicellularity. Yeah, what did y'all have for the event deck? Because those were interesting things. I just couldn't remember what they were. Catastrophes. Evolution of a nucleus is also the end of the game because that happened during the evolution of eukaryotes. Low chance insta-kill. I kind of want to give a reason why, though. Evolution of immunity would be too far into multicellular life. There is not really immunity at the single cell stage. Rapid cooling due to impact. Don't know what that's supposed to mean. Environmental spikes. Well, like, let's name them, right? So, asteroid. So this can affect pH, temperature. Eruption can affect pH, temperature. This organic matter. Organic matter. What else? Plasmid exchange. Yeah, that was a cool one. Plasmid exchange. We'll broadly call it DNA exchange. This can affect mutation rate. Yeah, that's a great idea. I love that. Mutation rate. I'm not sure what rapid cooling due to impact means. Are we talking like an asteroid that clouded the sky and then that like cooled things? I'm not sure exactly how early world worked. Forming colonies also counts as ending the game. I know you joined late. I'm not like ragging on you. I should have explained it a little better. The game starts as a bag of organic material, and you win by evolving to the point where your cells cooperate with one another. There are two endings: the multicellular stage, where you're like an amoeba and you're a colony of cells helping each other, or you end in the eukaryote. Amoeba are eukaryotes too, so that's not really fair. I guess in our made-up timeline, those can happen at different times. Which came first, multicellularism or consumption and symbiosis? I'm not entirely sure. But basically, any time that you have a cell cooperating with another, we'll call it there in terms of ending the game. Predation, so for neutrophil vamping, if you don't evolve well enough or by random chance you go extinct from other cells, that's going to be in the fitness calculation. So that's not going to be a rare event. Viroid development, that is true. Yeah. Neural evolution. I'm not actually sure when viruses evolved in the context of life forming, actually. It'd be kind of interesting to figure that out. Surely early on. I don't know if viruses came before or after bacteria. Surely after, because viruses are not self-sufficient, but I wonder if there are self-replicating proto-viruses or something. Let's continue that lo-fi music. What other events can we think of? Weakening of Earth's magnetic field. Oh, interesting. Magnetic field. What other ideas? I don't really know what that would affect, though. Certainly sounds important to early Earth. Some kind of self-replication then from a bag of molecules. So we're just gonna assume that once you get all three, that you are going to be self-replicating, just because, you know, still want the game to be playable, just very, very, very difficult. But to get to that stage is going to be really, really tough. Ah, affects radiation. I see, yes. Actually, that does make sense. Affects radiation. Chat, y'all are smart. Is this actually going to be a game, or are you just planning ideas? So, I can program in Python. I think this is well within what I can do as someone that has taken an intro class. This is, I think, going to be my go-to stream for when like Toxo's at work and I have nothing to do and I'm bored and I want to talk to chat, but I don't want to prepare something. Just like vibing out and turning this idea into code would be like a pseudo Zatsudan, pseudo Pomodoro study kind of relaxed stream, because sometimes I just want to hang out and chat and work on something, but the stuff that I typically do is very prepared and ahead of time, and sometimes it's just nice to chat. An ice age, that's a great idea. Ice age. Carbon dioxide emissions leading to snowball Earth. Yeah. Ice age, definitely a very interesting aspect. Bugged DNA, that's going to be in the mutation chance. So if you mutate and you mutate often, that might skew the slider in a very big way, and skewing the slider could affect your fitness, or it could help depending. These are great. Volcanic eruption spews out new materials. Yeah. I have that here. Eruption, pH, temperature, organic matter. Yeah. That's all good. Oh, this is so much fun. Oh, what else? A life Ooh, I like that, slippery critter. So maybe not a life explosion, but like currents, like cells were displaced from another part of Earth. I'll call it what you called it, life explosion, because I kind of do like that now that I think about it. Spawns in a bunch of foreign cells. I like that. That's awesome. Ocean acidification due to CO2 level increases. Yeah. How would that... I mean, yeah, that's under eruption though, right? pH, CO2 up in the environment, pH up, or pH down, sorry, and then that lowers the ocean pH. So I think that's still in there. I don't think we have to write anything new for that. Algal bloom. So algae would already be the end of the game. Ah, I like this. Colonization. Too much ammonia. I'll look into that. But I don't know if that would be an event, though. That could just be something that comes out organically from the simulation, right? Sudden environmental stat rerolls due to something like ocean currents displacing your cells. Ooh! Oh, that's fun. Displacement. Completely new environmental. That's oh, that's cool. Oh, this game is gonna be impossible. Extraterrestrial advanced life makes contact. Instant evolution advancement. Aliens. Of ending the game early. I think that's a lot of fun. I think that's awesome. That's really funny. These are all great ideas. Special achievement, yeah. I mean, if you can hit the gritty on this roll, I'm very happy to reward an achievement. You know, technically possible. Maybe it happened in our timeline. Maybe it didn't. Right? I don't know. But there it could be it could be a thing for sure. Earth gets destroyed by something. Oh yeah. Apocalypse. Total apocalypse. Of ending the game early. That's still ending the game early. This is a win and an instant loss. Well, this is lovely. This is awesome, you guys. This is so funny. Earthquake. How would an earthquake affect a microbe? I don't really know that it would. Maybe an explosion of organic material. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if earthquakes at that stage would have been major fitness changers. Supernova. Maybe gamma? Maybe like a gamma ray? I don't really know if those were instrumental in our early Earth. Gamma ray? Increases mutation rate dramatically. We have to make it so that the mutation rate can decrease as well. Do we have that in there somewhere? This is fitness, this is mutation. More or less, yeah. So the chance that you mutate, even if you have a high mutation chance, you should have the chance of mutating in a way that lowers that over time. Mass extinction where a bunch of cells go extinct. Massive regular seasonal shifts in environment. For the ocean environment, we're gonna call that stable just because like water temperature itself is pretty stable. And we're not playing like day by day, so I don't really know how it regulates. We'll do like average ocean temperature, right? For, I think every time you hit respawn, it'll be like 1,000 years. Something like that. Something like that. Tide changes depending on the biome. Oh, interesting. Ooh, okay. So biome, icosahedron. So biome. Methane releases can happen with subocean earthquakes. Interesting. Okay, so there are a couple of ideas, and remind me if I don't get to those. So one of the initial things in the HUD can be biome, and that'll bias the environment in certain ways. And then... oh, I'm not going to be able to pronounce your name, so sorry. Hrafsrainer? Sorry. Methane, depending on... Methane releases with sub-ocean earthquakes. So that's actually going to be something that we could do as an event in the protocell stage. So we'll do... protocell event. Earthquake. Methane increases environmental sulfur. GMB event, or theorized possibility of early biogenesis. Not entirely sure what that means. Water levels reduced because of heat or growth of land. We're mostly going to be in the ocean here, so water is not something that I think we have to be worried about. You actually started getting interested in biology. I'm very glad. I love biology. Continental drift. So we're not going to deal with terrestrial organisms at all. We're only in the cellular stage because it would be too complex to go beyond multi-cells. The environment could start to dry out. We're in water, so we'll be fine. What would super flares contribute? I'm not actually sure what that would mean. Like UV? I think we already have UV as one of the event decks. Drought/flooding. Affected by temperature changes resource ability. Yeah, the ocean we're going to call relatively homogeneous with regards to some of those, so I don't think we'll have to worry about those as well. Okay, so these are great environmental catastrophes. So let's think. Event deck. We'll do a copy of this. Just keep the title the same. Evolution milestones. Okay, so we're doing methane coming out of the protocell stage. Starts by using methane as not methane, we'll call it sulfur, as an electron acceptor. That's just because, from what I understand about early life, you used sulfur like we use oxygen as an electron acceptor. For mass freezing the water you're in. Ocean, that's a big body of water unlikely to freeze. So let's shift perspectives and not think about the environment. We'll think about the evolution of species themselves, right? So earlier organisms, these extremophiles that live in hydrothermal vents, they were using sulfur for their electron acceptor. Eventually they will use oxygen, but not before oxygen exists. So let's copy these over. So this one's just the environmental catastrophes. These ones are evolution milestones. Starts by using sulfur. Let's say there's some chance. Switch to iron. DNA repair mechanisms, that's going to be looped in with mutation rate over time. Don't have to do one for that. We're talking big jumps in evolutionary complexity. Yeah, some type of control in DNA replication that reduces mutation. Yeah, that'll happen every tick. You know, that's one of those things that happens every tick. Split between bacteria and archaea. We're doing that. We're going to let that organically evolve here. Proton pumps to live in high acidic / basic environments. I love that. So yeah, that's, yeah, so Troy C's got it. That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. That kind of jump in evolutionary complexity. So I don't know if I'll end up keeping that, but it's certainly an idea along the lines that I want to do. Evolution of proton pumps. Big improvement at extreme pH. Yeah, photosynthesis. So this starts the O2 counter. Evolution of predation starts predation counter. Some chance switch to iron. Evolution of metabolic complexity. Proton pumps. There's gonna have to be some level of order of these depending on where we go. Membrane-bound organelles is at the end of the game because that is a eukaryotic trait, where bacteria / archaea only. Remember that oxygen is also created by hydrolysis in the deep ocean is recently discovered. Do you know when that happened? Is that before or after photosynthesis started? Flagellar modal construction allows for directed motion. In the context of the ocean is so big and bacteria are so small that it's not going to necessarily change their environment. They'll just be able to get around locally, so I don't think we have to worry about flagella. Antifreeze proteins. Ocean is unlikely to freeze, so... oh, you know what? Chat, if you could get me the temperature at the bottom of the ocean, that could be interesting. Whether or not the increased pressure at the bottom of the ocean would allow for things to freeze while still remaining liquid. I wouldn't call them antifreeze, I call them chaperones. Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll take your idea, Troy, and I'll call them chaperones. Big improvement at extreme temperature. Fermentation. Oh, I don't know if oceanic microbes do fermentation. I actually just don't know because I don't think about ocean micro. I wish Resta were here. Resta worked on ocean microbiome stuff. I just collabed with her. I don't know. Do oceanic microbes do fermentation? I don't really know. Evolving cellulose, keratin, chitin. Those are structural proteins. I don't know whether or not they improve fitness in the ways that we have described them. Like in terms of changing their... Like they're more like hidden values, I would say. Those structures. -4 degrees. Interesting. Yeah, so I think chaperones is a great idea. I don't want to call them antifreeze because I don't know if that's technically correct. Hello, how is everyone imagining this game view? You don't have to imagine it. I'll pop up the UI right now. So basically, you just hit this respawn button, and every time you will respawn, and if you survive, then you'll be able to pass on your traits, and if you die, then you have to reload. So, and then you have a little bacteria guy here and a counter here that has your failed lineages. It's a roguelike from hell, which is what evolution really is. Respiration, but it develops only after photosynthesis and reduces oxygen toxicity. I love that. Yeah, let's put that in there. Do we put that in there? Bacteria, right? Bacteria. Oh, because we learned about mitochondria and we only learned about yeah, sure, yeah, no. They're aerobic bacteria. I got confused for a second. Yep. Aerobic respiration. This needs O2. We'll call O2 broadly in the environment. And reduces oxygen toxicity. I love that. That's great. Will specific proteins evolve? Kind of, because like photosynthesis, you could say that that's a conglomerate of novel proteins and an organelle-esque. Oh, actually, I lied, because if we hit, no, I didn't lie, because early ocean environment, the oxygen producers were cyanobacteria, not photosynthetic plant cells like we know them today. So this is still consistent with a game that works. Endosymbiosis is a branch for organelles. Endosymbiosis is where the game would end, just because this is already such a mess. Okay, I like this. I like this as a set for major milestones of the cell stage. Now we get into colony stage. The structural proteins will be defense against predation, and you'll need special enzymes to digest them. I'll put that in for now. Predation-specific proteins. I don't know a lot about bacterial predation and the stuff that's involved in that, so I'm not like saying that's a bad idea. I'm saying I'm less comfortable just because I know less icosahedron. Carotenoids for UV resistance. Oh, I like that. Resistance. I'm having a lot of fun, y'all. This is really interesting. And it's going to be no fun at all to play. It's going to be absolutely miserable clicking that respawn button, but I love it. I think this is so fun. Yeah, I like this set. This is a good set. I'll go back. If you have any other ideas, I'll go back to this stage and we can think of other stuff later. Just as Darwin would have wanted it. Exactly. It's rough out here, guys. Okay, so we'll call this complexity stage. So now this is getting into the more nitty-gritty of like protein and molecular biology as we know it, out of like chemical evolution and into like specific adaptations. So okay, so one thing that I can think of for the complexity stage is digestive resistance, either of you or your food. I like that, right? So if we're thinking about the stuff that needs to happen when, you know, to evolve into what we know now as a eukaryote, if we go down the one cell ate another cell and then they started helping each other, the first thing that needs to happen is that cell that gets eaten has to survive. So that cell has to somehow evolve digestive resistance as an unlikely event. The newest genre of game, a Darwinian-like. I love that. What happens when you combine Slay the Spire with Cookie Clicker? Now take place in real time for extra realism. Yeah, we're gonna experience the heat death of the universe before that. I mean, technically not, right? Not the heat death of the universe, but we'll all certainly be dead. Antiviral proteins, that'll happen in that previous stage. I already mentioned predation back there. bonding between colony mates. Yeah, so we'll say, I think biofilm. Before that, cell-cell signaling. Quorum sensing. We'll do quorum. We'll do the, whoa, we got a tech tree going. Quorum sensing. So this is the ability of a bacteria to sense and react to its environment, and we'll say that that techs into biofilm. Production, which techs. So biofilm production. So for those of you who don't know, there are, bacteria, and when there are a sufficient density of those bacteria, they start to figure out, hey, we own this place. We can start really carving out a niche for ourselves in an environment. And if the environment is stationary, ooh, did biofilms evolve in the ocean? Oh, I don't think about that. I don't know if biofilms evolve in the ocean. But say, for example, you have something like Serratia, which is like the pink sludge that happens when you don't clean your shower. That happens because the Serratia bacteria, they sense that there are a lot of Serratia nearby, and they go, okay, we're going to go from a single cell lifestyle to a lifestyle where we all cooperate by forming a biofilm, which will protect us from the environment. So individual Serratia don't make biofilms, but when they sense that there's enough of them around, they'll start cooperating. So biofilm production could be a thing, although I don't know if it happened in the ocean. Honestly, memes aside, going for an idle game route here could be super successful. I have a full-time job. If anybody else wants to steal this idea and make it, you have my blessing. I don't plan on making any money off of this really stupid idea. Certainly you'll take it off my hands because I don't want to really actually code this. I just think it would make for good content. And also, me coding this in Python, I'm not a great coder, so you can watch me rage while I make a rage game. Any reasons to evolve dormancy? I like that. Dormancy. So, let's do that here. Dormancy. That's really cool. So, what do we call that? Persistence is what it is in bacteria, at least. So what this would do, it would dramatically lower mutation rate and respawn rate. But increases, I can't really call it fitness. I guess in this game we'll have to call it fitness, but increases fitness. I love that. Persistence, that's really interesting. Dormancy, because bacteria sporulate all the time. Why don't we get stromatolites at some point? I don't know what those are. I'm not actually an early biology person. Endgame condition and multiple cells are working together. Exactly, that's exactly when the game ends. Specialization within the colony will probably be the last stage. Yeah, exactly. Like when you are a bona fide moving as one organism, like an amoeboid or something. Even though amoeba are single-celled, they act multicellularly. A biofilm, it's kind of, again, I wish I had like it's easy to say. I wish I had a super chat every time I said biology is a spectrum, right? Because bacteria acting in a biofilm where they talk to each other and coordinate anti-immune responses as a mass of cells, how different is that from an algae, or how different from that? It's a little hard to tell, but certainly a hydra that has specialization within a colony, as icosahedron had mentioned, that's probably a good endpoint. So biofilm production doesn't have to be. So we'll do biofilm production into cellular speciation. Yeah, icosahedron, you're absolutely right. And then that's victory. That's one path. So then the digestive resistance, then you have to evolve digestive resistance, then you have to evolve similarly. You have to, so not only digestive resistance, digested bacteria has to tolerate host environment. mutual tolerance. We'll call this mutual tolerance. So that's the skill tree for the multicellularity. That's one tree, and then we can also do digestive resistance into mutual tolerance, and then tech into genetic culling. So this is something that I learned that's very interesting. And it's something that I've been working on because I'm working on a video about the microbiome. That's something that's going to come out hopefully in a month or two. I just wrote the script and it is as long as the pre-on video. I swore I would return to making 10-minute videos, but the microbiome is so cool, you guys. And learning about how the microbiome evolved to cooperate with us is analogous. So, you know, our mitochondria are remnants of ancient bacteria that gave up a lot of their genes because we provided them with such a stable environment that they no longer had to make all the stuff that they had to make. And in return, we got a bunch of stuff that they were allowed to make. So icosahedron exchanging nutrients, I'll lump that in with genetic, mutual tolerance and genetic culling, because that's mutual. Maybe it's another step in the skill tree. Mutual tolerance, they have to tolerate each other. Mutual, and then true mutualism. And then genetic culling, where you just like trim your genes so that you become dependent on one another. Because it's not enough that, like, if that bacteria isn't offering anything to increase your fitness, it's likely that it'll get trimmed just because it's eating the food inside of you. You know, so there's some penalty, but that has to be overset with another big event like dependence. We'll call this not mutualism. We'll call it, maybe we simplify it. Mutual tolerance, and then we'll follow that up with dependence, interdependence, and that's victory. That's cool. What about the formation of nucleus? Is that directly endgame? Yeah, that's too complicated. We'll end as soon as one cell consumes the other, because if I know my biology correctly, it's presumed that archaea were the first to consume a bacteria, and then that became a eukaryotic cell, but I don't believe archaea had a nucleus back then. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not an archaea expert, despite having done a video on that. Calcium biomineralization evolved super early on for pH regulation, biofilm production, potential origin of bones. I mean, that would happen so early, right? Super early on. And I think that would probably be here. Calcium. Yeah, okay. This is cool. I like this. This is very cool. This is the overall skill tree. So really, this and the first stage should be pretty short, although this one, I think, the chance that this happens should also be quite low. Whereas this, I feel like, is the easier victory. So if we call this, like, I don't know, neutral ending. Because I can see evolutionarily that happening a lot easier, and this one is like true ending. Just to make it even more infuriating for anybody that actually wants to finish this game. Is being eukaryotic even necessary to become multicellular? Oh, I mean, again, like, biology is a spectrum. I believe Hydra are animals, which are eukaryotic, and they're the most simple, like, 2-cell thing that I can think of, right? Hydras are 2 cells. It's been so long since I thought of anything early biology. Something akin to penicillin. So that would be here. Density of competitors. So we'll put that here in this event deck for the cell stage. I like that. Anti-competition molecules. Call it that. Just because calling them antibiotics is technically not correct. If you've watched my what video did I do where that was an issue? Damn, I've really come far when I don't remember what video I'm referring to. Like, that's impressive for me, because I churned out a lot of freaking content over the year. A lot of the content for my style, I mean. I don't remember. I talked about antibiotics at some point. The idea is, and it's in one of my long form videos, the idea is antibiotics is just a name we gave penicillin, when in reality we don't actually know why fungi make penicillin. Because is it possible that they use it to kill other microbes? Sure. But the concentrations that they make penicillin in are different than the concentration that we use them in as an antimicrobial, so it's unlikely that they evolved penicillin for the purpose of killing other things. Your DNA will be more chaotic, and developing a nuclear membrane will make it more stable. That's kind of if we don't go for the canonical Earth life form route, right? Like, I don't know what the origin of membranes are. I'll look into it. I think that's interesting, that if we can have like an alternate timeline where membranes evolved before multicellularism, like internal membranes, right? Because one of the things that is characteristic of bacteria is that they lack membrane-bound organelles. So this could be influencing mutation rate. Oh, thanks for the super chat, Troy C. Wanted to give cheers for great videos, by the way. Love your content. I think it's super important to have good quality educational content. Thank you so much. Thank you. First super chat too. I am honored. Very, very honored. It does mean a lot when y'all show support. You don't have to throw money at me, but I do appreciate it. What I like thrive on, what I consume for dopamine is positive comments. I do read all of them. And so it's like a double whammy. Not only, you know, it's nice to get a super chat, but also the comments are nice too. I'm a comment eating monster. So yeah, the evolution of membrane-bound organelles would be in the complexity stage, and we would do that if we don't want to do the canonical way that life evolved on Earth, which I think is interesting. So that would affect mutation rate, and probably some other things, but I'm not good enough at paleobiology to like figure that out. Are you starting out with RNA? So what we're starting out with, a great time to tab back just as a reminder, the proto stage. We are starting at a stage where we click the respawn button until we get these three things all in the same envelope. And then once we get these things all in the same envelope, that's when we consider the cell to be like living. So we're kind of hand waving away RNA world and just calling it nucleic acid, just because I think it's a little easier to conceive. It makes it a little more fun in a terrible, terrible game. Okay, so I like all of that. Your ideas are very good, chat. Very smart chatters. Are we actually using DNA? Should we call it encoding molecule to be more general? Ooh. I think we still call it DNA, just because I don't want to call proteins organic molecule machines. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little contrived to call it something that it already isn't. Although I think the argument for calling it encoding molecule is valid. Could be fun. I'll mark it down as a possibility. Whoa, where's my, here we go. Nucleic acid coding molecule. Okay, this is really good. I like this. This is a good structure. Now let's do something about what one tick, when you click a button, what will that button do? So let's just visualize this. We'll put down a square here. So every time you hit the respawn button, Every time you hit the respawn button, a couple things are going to happen. So environment. What order should we do this in? Roll for events. We'll roll for events. Resolve events. Or we'll call this maybe update environment. We have to do this in order, so roll for events, update environment. Then we'll do mutate slash update. Yeah, we'll do mutate. We'll do that first, just because it keeps the chunks a little more manageable in terms of understanding how this works. Update environment, mutate, calculate fitness. Calculate new population. Okay. How does this look? So every time you click the respawn button, you will roll for the unlikely events. Those events have a chance to update the environment. If not, then the environment will have its own code. Then independently of the environment, we have mutations. And that's how it should work, right? Your environment doesn't affect how you mutate. But it kind of will, because we are hand waving some of the randomness by increasing the chance that a mutation happens with more organic molecules in the area, which isn't technically true on a cell by cell basis, but it's good enough. Then we calculate fitness by comparing the environment to our new stats. Mutate and update stats. Calculate fitness and then calculate the new population. And then here, increment timer. Increment timer and then check if stage is completed. Shouldn't mutation come first to account for oxidation events and the like? I don't think it necessarily has to, although you can explain a little more. To update environment later, since that will have to include the results of the first calculations. Yeah, right? Respawn, roll for event, then environment update. Or do you mean like after fitness? Because fitness should come last. Sorry, I'm not entirely understanding what Aiko and Troy are saying. If you could elaborate, I'm just not quite seeing the logic. Population equals environment, technically. I don't know that I agree. Because you're gonna hit respawn anyway. This entire thing is circular. It's both before and after, but this is like one tick of the button. And calculating fitness, that starts you, so you can get like an HP bar or something, and this new population will be... Oh, I think maybe we have different ideas about what population means. I'm equating population to being kind of like your HP bar, where if your population is 0, you just die. Right? So it's your like lineage. It's not like your individual cell, it's like a lineage population. Because if you think about it, if you were to do it at a cell by cell basis, as soon as this asteroid hits, you're just dead automatically. But in reality, your lineage, because there are so many of you, some of those cells will have a chance to mutate out alive, and that happens every time you hit the respawn button. So I think maybe that might help explain why I have it structured like this. And please let me know if it's not, because I'm not the best at teaching, or not teaching, because I'm like not a great coder or a programmer, but it's how I'm logicking how I would program this. You want the mutation to respond to the current tick rather than the previous tick. That's just how it makes sense to me. I'd have to think maybe offline a little harder about whether or not this is the way that makes the most sense. But to me, this is pretty good, and I can run it by some of my Discord chatters. I have a lot of computer people in my Discord, which, by the way, I'll post a link. I'm gonna make it public pretty soon, probably on my first year. But just for y'all in chat, let me go ahead and invite you all, so that you can hop in and have a good time, chat about biology. So if you want to join the Discord, there's the link. Please make sure that you read the rules and everything. What do I mean by respawn? So this entire game about biology is about death, right? Because you don't actually get to control how you evolve. What you do get to control as a player is whether or not you continue to play the game. So the respawn button basically updates all of your values and updates the environment, and that'll calculate a fitness value that gets multiplied by a reproduction rate, and that becomes your new population. And if your population ever hits 0, you lose. So on the HUD, I should also have population counter. Yeah. Okay. I like that. That's cool. Okay. So. I'm kind of curious how many people in chat have programming background. Because there are more of you hanging out in chat than I expected. So respawn is a generation. Kind of. I'd say it's like a group of generations, just because if we're trying to make it as realistic to biology as possible, it'd be like 1,000 years worth of generations or something. Because this is more concurrent viewers than I kind of expected for me to be doing programming, or programming like, and I kind of want to know how like severely I'm showing my ass here in terms of like building the architecture of getting this done. Because the reason why I'm confident that I could build this game is because there's nothing complicated here. It's just you have a list of values and the values update based on another set of values. So hypothetically, with my 1 semester of programming in Python, this should be possible. Is it going to be pretty? No. I don't know how to make a game. I don't know how to use Blender. I don't know how to use Unity or any other actual game engine, nor do I want to learn. But if it's something as simple as this, like I can make this in Python, where you just click this button until you win, but you probably won't because this game is insane. The majority of you say no. That's really interesting to me. Yeah, so we're kind of like in this together, I guess, in terms of like gaming out how this would happen. I hope you find it useful. If you're young and you are looking to do programming, I hope this is a decent introduction maybe to how to think about programming, although I'm by far the most qualified person to teach you that. If you release game open source, then I'm willing to make icons using pixel art. Oh, that would be so cool. For those of you who don't know, Icosahedron is a great, amazing artist. I don't know, Aiko, if you want to like plug your stuff, please do so, because yeah, the art that Aiko draws is insane. I want to link that image that Aiko had drawn for me that I had commissioned. My cursor is hidden. 1 second. It's so cool. And I don't know that everybody's gotten a chance to see it. And if you haven't, just plug it here. No, I can't freaking... Yeah. I guess this is a link to my Twitter too. Yeah, I would really prefer, just to avoid controversy on the Discord channel, to keep it 16 plus, but I mean, I will be here for a very, very long time. This is a hobby I see myself doing forever, and if you remain interested in the channel, when you turn the right age, be very happy to have you a part of the community. Only 26 of us, a fairly small sample size. It's true. The streams are generally a lot cozier, a lot more intimate, and not really, I do this purely for the fun, right? Where, like, if I were to compare my true artistic sort of, goals are more aligned with my YouTube channel. That's where I think of myself as an artist, right? Like I get to ideate and edit and practice writing and all the editing. The streaming I find to be enjoyable on its own. So I'm very happy with a small audience where we can chill. Saturn eating his children, exactly. That's exactly right. I've known about Aiko's art for a bit now, and seeing their style, I was like, I want one. I want one. And I know just the painting to get a modification of. It's so cool. Okay, so where were we? Yeah, welcome to the Discord, y'all. Yeah, okay, so thinking about OBS, thinking about how I would structure this in terms of breaking this up in streams, right? So it's no use to just talk a big game, right? Like, I don't really like... I again, for those of you who have watched my failure stream, which is archived, you can just go in the live tab of my channel and find this stream where I talk about the extensive number of content failures that I've had over the years, right? I've made a lot of content that nobody's ever seen, and I've learned the hard way that it feels really bad to make false promises. So instead, I want to make a plan and like a timeline for how to set this up. And it might not be the smartest way, but like I'm kind of troubleshooting this as I go, as like a first year programmer kind of deal. Let me think. How would I break this up? First, what I would want to do is proto stage, proto cell stage first. We'll make this the goals for the first stream that I do when I'm making this game. I don't know when that would be. It could be months from now, if Toxo is ever out, slash if I want to stream and have nothing to do. This will be what I code. Alexandros, you lost. No worries. I think we're wrapping up this segment of the stream, and I might just move into just chatting, but I want to leave this segment of the stream with a plan, just so that I don't put this on the back shelf and then never think about it again, because I'm, as of right now, in my sleep-deprived state, I am very excited, and I'm very excited to start programming this. Hey Syzygy, welcome to the stream, Syzygy. Like Myelin, by the way, who I forgot to shout out when Myelin was in stream earlier. Myelin, you can search them up. Hold on, one sec. Let me plug all my friends. Myelin. I don't know what her what their ad is on YouTube, but if you Google that, you might find them on YouTube. They do psychology and anime streams and content, which have been very fun. Syzygy is a astrophysics VTuber, freshly new on the scene. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, so unfortunately, Syzygy, you're coming in at the end of the stream when I've already talked about this horrible game, but just to give you an idea, this is going to be the UI, and the only intervention you have is to click this respawn button, because evolution doesn't care about your choices. You have no choice in evolution, you only have randomness. Life is gacha, and you are a triple S tier, you are rare gacha get. And I wanted to make a game that sort of illustrates that element of life gacha. So there's not going to be gameplay except hitting the respawn button and seeing what happens, which I think will be a lot of fun. So the proto stage is a reasonable place to start just because the environment is very simple. So in my first stream there, I would want to make a respawn button that. Updates and environment. I think that's important to do first. And then I can wrap in the events later. Updates environment, updates my stats. And if I'm really ambitious, calculate fitness. Actually, for the proto stage, this is actually much simpler because we only need 3 things to happen. Make a respawn button that updates the environment. That's still the same. And progress the game once lipids, nucleic acids plus peptides are all generated at the same time. Make a save and load function. Okay, I think that's a good goal for the first of these dev streams. Yeah, I think that'd be kind of fun. Where's the money grab aspect of the gacha? So Aiko had volunteered to draw pixel art for free. If we wanted to be, if we wanted to be, I don't know, Riot or something, we could. you could pay for skins. Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be fun? That'd be really, really funny. There should definitely be a population cap so computing doesn't destroy CPU. Yeah, for sure. I need advice on what that would look like, though. Think about population cap. Although, hopefully, Equilibria will take care of that. If I pay $5, let me skip the soup stage. Oh, that would be very mobile game, kind of. Yo, speed up tokens? Oh my god, it actually is Cookie Clicker. That's nuts. Charge per generation. No, I think that's too much. I think Toxo's got it. $5 to play the game less. That'd be really funny. I love that idea. That's so cool. Yeah, this is awesome. I actually had this idea a long time, and I don't know even if Toxo remembers. I idly talked about making my own evolution game that was more realistic, but I didn't have like a good strategy. But I think this idea that was gifted to me by the boba sleep deprivation gods, I think this could be fun, y'all. Like, in the arc of my channel, it would be really fun to like check in every once in a while with y'all and get to see the evolution of this and then get to play it together. I think that'd be pretty sick. Again, no promises on when that would happen. Yeah, a lot of fun. Not to say that Spore isn't fun, right? But I think I had an idea. You know what it is? This is what it was. This was the original idea. The original idea was not to make an evolution game back when I first pitched this to Toxo, like half a year ago, I want to say. The original idea was to play Spore, but 100% accurately, where I would not add eyes or anything. I would go in order of like single cell to worm to fish to weird lizardy rat to rat, you know. And that would be a whole series, and that would be a source of comedy. But I'm not really a gaming streamer. I don't think I have the capability to game and yap at the same time. So this is actually a lot better because, I don't know, it's a fun way to keep my programming skills pretty sharp. This is making me want to revive my old game idea. Yeah, there are a whole bunch of people online who are grinding out their own passion projects, and like, while Fi the Neutrophil is a passion project of mine, this is like, I don't know, a Titan or something. Like, at this point, I'm pretty comfortable with Adobe Premiere and drawing my crap assets and then asking Toxo for beautiful assets, and you know, I've got a pipeline going. I'm like comfortable. I'm in the flow of things. I'm getting better. I'm practicing. I'm working on my stuff. But programming, I've always been sort of bad at. So this is a really good way for me to practice Python, which is, you know, pretty relevant for my job, I would say. Very cool, very cool. Evolution game and everything becomes crab. Yeah. Actually, Morjuice, another chatter, had mentioned that you should get an achievement if you end up as a crab, which I think is very funny. Would you need a population cap if you kept track of the total population and the fraction of the population with each combination of mutations? I think the population cap will get kind of important because we are planning to have other organisms like spawn in the various events that we've built together. So yeah, like but at the end of the day, it's just a number, right? Like 1 million as an item in a list is not necessarily, because here's the thing, I'm not running the mutation program on every individual member of a population. We're going to take that as a whole, and then the fitness will determine how many survives. So it's not quite one-to-one with how biology really works, but that's the only way to run this without destroying your GPU. Yeah. One final idea, a chart for evolution at the end. I love that idea, I really do, because I know that there are other evolution games that let you do that, but this one will have you clicking so frequently that that picture would be enormous. It would be funny if reaching multicellularity automatically makes you a crab. That's really funny. I think if you win, you should become a crab. It would just become instant. That is really funny. I like that a lot. So we'll do complexity stage. If you get the true ending, you become a crab. That's great. That's really funny. That's so good. Yeah, I would definitely make this open source, or if someone wants to profit off of it, as long as it's priced reasonably, I don't really care. Just because I think this would be fun to play, and I don't plan on making my life, I don't plan on sustaining myself on something like a game. I wouldn't be able to make it look good enough to be sold for anything anyway. I would definitely just make it free. But the idea of microtransactions for skins for your bacteria and getting to skip the boring parts of the game, y'all are very gacha game pilled, or at least idle game pilled. Yeah, that's good. I like this. Okay, let's move on to just a little bit of chatting. Maybe an airbrush view of the tree. That, I think, would be... Here's the thing. So Pandemic, right? The game Pandemic was released for free as a browser game, and for legal reasons, I can't say that Plague Inc. is the same game, but if somebody wanted to turn this, you know, whatever for fun project into a real game, I think it would be like Pandemic into Plague Inc., right? Like the airbrushed view of the tree, that's something that the Plague Inc. equivalent of this game could do. It would look more like a blob, yeah, probably. But if you get the true ending, you should become a crab. That's just, it's too funny to not do. Yeah, let's go into chatting, and I will have my 1 year anniversary slide up just as a permanent advertisement. While we just chat, why don't we? I'll stay here. Clicking the microtransaction button will open up a bootleg banking screen. Okay. Every time you click an ad plays, okay. That's so funny. Yippee, happy 1 year. Thank you so much. Yeah, a little early to celebrate. I want to do most of the 1 year anniversary talking on that actual day. So I'm going to leave the topics for the 1 year for that. But maybe I don't know. Yeah, no, I do want it to be special. Toxo may or may not be joining me. I don't really know if she wants to come join me and we can hang out and chat and eat cake. There's a rumor that I might be getting a very nice sweet treat for that day. And I'm excited to share that with you all, because being on this platform has been like the most fun that I've ever had with making content, and then, you know, that's just really special. Today is my actual anniversary. That's awesome. Happy anniversary. What of, if I may ask? Crab emoji. Yeah. I'm waiting for the day evolution VTuber pops up and makes their whole thing a crab. Haven't seen one of those. Plenty of shark VTubers. Plenty of sharks in the sea. Haven't seen a crab VTuber yet. Someone should get on that. I think that'd be really funny. The ultimate life form. The, what is it? The, this is what the ideal male body looks like. Yeah. Yeah, so how are you all doing in the middle of... I guess we're not even in the middle of summer anymore. We are heading towards the end, and my real job in full will begin again, and I will be with students once more. And that'll cut down a lot of time that I would have had to do Find the Neutrophil stuff, but I'm excited. It's always exciting to go back to teach a new set of students, just because I think teaching is also a little like gacha. You never know what students you're gonna get, but you know, all of my students have been pretty good. It's more about rolling for the experience, because the school year can get quite chaotic. Yes, I do teach, actually. So I'm a full-time teacher at a university, so I teach undergraduates. It's the best job in the whole wide world. I cannot express how thankful I am to my institution that they have a full-time position with benefits where I can do Find the Neutrophil essentially professionally. Although the goal is different, right? So I've talked about this several times. The goal of Find the Neutrophil is not to educate, but to entertain and to keep you engaged. So entertain and engage. It's not actually to educate, because if you wanted an education, you should honestly just do Khan Academy. Until I make my own Khan Academy, maybe down the line, then you can pay for that. But the goal of teaching is obviously to teach and to help them get a degree that can help their careers. But here we're just vibing, we're just chilling. You don't have to treat biology in such a serious way all the time. You can just have fun with it. And that's what I appreciate about the ability to express myself in these two different spaces. I finally got into a local uni. Congratulations, Mandrake. That's very exciting. I hope you have a good time. University was a very mixed experience for me, in the sense that I went through a lot of university, probably with subclinical, we'll call subclinical the big sad, you know, entirely brought upon by my feelings of inadequacy and the unstable job market and gloomy future prospects. But it didn't have to be that way. I told myself that I would see like a therapist during my years in undergrad, and I just didn't. And that's probably one of my biggest regrets, because something could have been done about the big sad, and I actively did nothing about it, but I'm fine now. So I hope that your days in uni are filled with appropriate challenge, growth, and friends that will you'll hang on to for quite some time. Yeah, it certainly is an exciting time to be a student. I don't know what it is that you are majoring in. I don't know if you want to share, just out of curiosity. I'm already in the trenches. My schooling system is very different. That is interesting. Yeah, I don't really know of a schooling system that starts this early. I teach second grade. I love it, but it's not exactly intellectually stimulating. I bet it's emotionally stimulating, though. I could never teach under high schooler age, I think. And only then, like, I don't even think I could teach high schoolers, but I'm definitely not equipped to teach younger than that. Excuse me. And what I mean by that is, I respect K through 12 teachers to such an extreme degree. Like, I get to just be a teacher. That's wonderful. But K through 12, you have to, quote unquote, like double major in being a therapist. And I don't want to. That's not to say that I'm not a sympathetic ear to students, right? But the kind of societal contract that we sign is when you turn 18, you are supposed to be transitioning into being an adult. I won't say you are an adult, because that's just in a legal way. We all know practically that if you live at home and you don't have to pay bills, the minute you turn 18, if you aren't paying bills and aren't living at home, I mean, let me bring that back. Let me bring that back. Living at home is totally cool for an adult. What I mean to say is that if you are not financially responsible for yourself, or let me back that up. If you are not fully responsible for yourself in your own existence, it's hard to say that you're an adult at that age, right? If you are a 16-year-old and you're out there, you've got a job and you've got your own place, I think that grants you more adulting points, right, than an 18-year-old who hasn't had a job and then is, vaulted straight to university. It's okay. I was incubated in the womb of academia for a very, very long time. Arguably, you could count grad school as still being a bit of a student. Not a bit of a student. You are a student in graduate school, but you still have bills to pay and you are making money at that age. But it doesn't feel like full adulting, where you can be laid off and have to deal with that reality. Anyway, this whole ramble is to say that, like, I don't think I would do well with a less mature life stage, just because I don't have the upkeep, the RPM, the GPU, the RAM to double as someone who has emotional responsibility to their students. In my capacity, students can certainly come with me with problems and we can still have conversations, but in university there's a whole structure where I can guide them to people who are more trained to help them with their problems than I would be, right? I can kind of be a part of their support system, but I'm not like solely responsible for it. So it's like K through 12 has so much respect because you have to take on a lot as a human being, and I think that's awesome. I just wish you were all paid more. I was really, really hoping for that in the future. Currently need to run Algebra 2 as a prereq. I see, not decided yet. Oh yeah, you just got it, right? You wouldn't have an idea. The brain's still not done cooking. Exactly, the brain's got some time to cook. I think the thing about 25 being the peak, I think that's misinformation. I'm not entirely sure. But everyone's on their own biological clock, so I don't really want to like peg adulthood to a number. It's more like if you've had to fend for yourself in a large way, even at home, if you're paying bills and you're at home, that's still fending for yourself. You're not any less of an adult as long as you have your own survival in your own hands. If you don't have your own survival in your own hands, then that's like, the full, harsh, lonely world has not been realized yet. But it's not really necessary, right? Because there are systems where people stay with their parents for a very long time because it is very financially advantageous to do so, and it is, of course. It's just that when you transition from living with parents to being on your own, that transition can be a shock and can be can force you to adapt. We're talking about an evolution game. It can force you to adapt, basically. But certainly, like, living at home is a very good strategy, especially in these times. I plan to leech off my parents for as long as possible, just not financially, because I would feel bad. Yeah, I mean, if you've got a plan and you are aware, then that is 100% a great strategy to have, right? As long as you are mentally prepared to eventually be alone, I think that's awesome. I spend just as much free time advocating and working with students who aren't in the best place at home. It's not just pure teaching, and I can't do that. It makes me sad. And I don't necessarily know that I am the most... there's the whole spoons thing. I don't really like using that terminology or labeling it as such, but I prefer to think of it as like GPU. I might not have like GPU as a human to form that many close or potentially close relationships. It's a different ball game entirely, and I just wish it was paid as much as the work demands it to be. Good night, Alexandros. Thanks for coming. I got 90% on my NS exam thanks to me. Is that true? That's interesting. I don't think I explicitly teach, but I'm glad to. I'll take any credit that I can get, though. I'm still a drifter. Academically or just like around, right? Because I think drifting around in terms of figuring out what you're actually interested in terms of academics, again, I'm one to talk about being an adult when I am still in academia, still in the warm embrace of having a university job. But in terms of like at that stage as an undergraduate, I don't want to like overstate the importance, but it is nice to identify something that you want to study in undergraduate, and it's a different process for every student, and it's an interesting one because I've only gotten one perspective before, and it was my own, and getting to chat to so many students about their life priorities and what they want to study and what they want to do has been really enlightening. And yeah, I love hearing about all the interesting things that they want to do and work towards. But I don't know, unsolicited advice is ultimately a sustainable life is one that only you can decide on, right? If you are being pressured by anybody to do a certain thing, some people can make that happen, right? Some people can take their parental expectations and just grit their teeth and live a good life. I couldn't do that though, right? There's nothing wrong with following your parents' expectations as long as you can tolerate it, and I couldn't do that. And people that have watched my stream with Psych and MD, the doctor VTuber, can attest to the fact that like I could have gone down a very different life path, and that would have been pretty terrible. Doctors work way harder than I do. Yeah. Oh, what to chat about? I kind of wanted to chat about some of the brilliant ideas my students had about their final projects, but I think that's not exactly ethical because I don't know, maybe they want to take those ideas and spin them off into companies or something, and it would be bad if I mean we didn't sign like a NDA or anything. It was just maybe I won't talk about those are interesting though. It's fun. I think what's most rewarding about my stage of instructor is I get to be in between underclassmen and upperclassmen, in between in between like sophomores and juniors in that area, and to me that represents a pretty significant intellectual transition. Because I feel like if you study biology, you spend your first 2.5 years purely learning biology. Like you, at least in my education, it was just memorization, math, and memorization for 2.5 years. And at the end of the third year is when you can actually start like thinking for yourself. And I think that's a really special time to be with students. I kind of refer to it, it's infantilizing, but it is kind of how I see it, because in the realm of academic thinking, I find undergrads to be like babies. It's like when you have a toddler and they like are starting to form a personality. Like you go from this little fleshy machine that eats, poops, and cries, and eventually they're walking and talking, and then they start laughing at things, right? They start developing a sense of humor, and they start making you laugh. Not that I would know. I don't find babies to be very funny, but they but they can make people laugh, right? If I had my own child, maybe I would think differently, but the idea is that like the same feeling of like this baby is becoming a person is the same feeling I have watching students go from memorization to coming up with their own ideas. It's like, oh, this baby's having a novel thought. This baby is planning an experiment, is designing controls, is critically analyzing a paper for the first time. And that process, I wish I could relive that, because for me, my own intellectual development, that was very important to myself in terms of thinking like, oh, I could do this academia thing for a little while longer. Related to the evolution game, what are your thoughts on panspermia? I know it's broadly dismissed as moving the goalpost, but it's fun to speculate on. It certainly is fun to speculate on. The thing with paleobiology and stuff is that like, because they're not really a lab science in the same way that cell and molecular biology is, I just don't care. I'm not emotionally invested, right? And that's kind of rude, but I'm trying to convey my taste as something that's important to me as a science communicator. My taste is in the elegance of experiments, things that are verifiable and testable, because I think that's the cleanest way to do science. That's not to say that people who do paleobiology and stuff, that's not to say that their work isn't as important, but for my taste, it's just not as tasty to me, because my taste relies more on the process of making science than it does with learning something about the universe, which is kind of counterintuitive for a science communicator, right? I think a lot of science communication happens with the cool thing in mind. Like, oh, isn't it cool that we're like archaea? That's a cool fact. But to me, those things are more like Snapple facts, where they're like, oh, that's fun and cool, I guess, and it gives my brain a little bit to play with. But in terms of what I find to be obsessive, like the obsessive things that I do, that's more in the process and the elegance of doing science. It's just a little bit of a different taste, I think. Medicine is also different from country to country depending on how healthcare works, public, private, etc. Yeah, that's definitely true as well. I'm generally talking about the US system, which is quite grueling. Definitely taking biology. I'm glad. I think most universities make you take biology, as well they should, because biology is very important for being an informed citizen that has the power to vote and to enact political change in the world, right? Ideally, you want your policies to be in line with what is correct about science. And so when people have a misunderstanding of how biology works, that can end up disastrous in terms of the things that society decides to do. I have to depart, but thanks so much for the great stream. Hope to see you next time. Very fun sign-off, Sister G. Talk to you later. Bye. Yeah. So, where was I? Yeah, the first time I thought I could do science was exactly like that. When I had my first, oh, what if you did this for this experiment? And from that moment, I was like, oh, maybe I could do like a science thing. And that was very fun for me personally. All right. Like selling supplements for bigger parts, for example. Yeah, like here's the thing that's sort of interesting. Let me think. Oh, I don't know if that thing is doxable. So in terms of like having the idea that education equals people making smarter choices is actually not that straightforward. Sorry, Neutroflow mapping. So context. My members are going to get to watch my first pre-fi video, and in that I'm going to be talking about supplements that are claiming to increase the size of some secondary male sex characteristics, if you know what I mean. And you would think that more education would automatically mean a populace that makes better decisions, but actually, in my research, I actually find that that's not really the case. And I really wish I had one of the conspiracy researcher VTubers around right now to talk a little more about that kind of thing. But yeah, in my research, science literacy, the correlation between science literacy and believing in some things that the science establishment considers as true, not that high, actually. So you would be surprised at how little education actually affects people's understanding of scientific fact. And that's difficult because the nature of truth is, of course, very difficult, right? Anybody with a healthy respect for science knows that the nature of truth is squishy in a kind of way, where you can always find a study that agrees with you, and it's really hard to know unless you're in the field what most scientists are saying, apart from reporters who you then have to trust. And not only do you have to trust the reporters to report science accurately, you also then have to report the scientists themselves are doing the work correctly. And people take issue with every level of that scrutiny. And so what that ends up turning out to be, at least in the US, that there seems to be a sort of disconnect between, or rather the effect of having more education on believing in something like the efficacy of vaccines is not as high as you would have expected. There's definitely a correlation, if I remember correctly. It's just not as high. Would I ever do a video on silly supplements, or is it too much of a topic? I've done one on kombucha, which is as close to one that I will get, because if you haven't watched that kombucha video, I think it's like the least popular video, and I actually thought it was going to do very well because I put Brad Leone from Bon Appetit in the thumbnail, but actually nobody watched it. I did one on kombucha because kombucha is a supplement that I fell for, or rather it's not really a supplement, but it's a probiotic that I fell for. I was at a graduate school where the microbiome was like really, really hot. Everybody wanted to do microbiome stuff. And so that was the perfect time for microbiome probiotic salespeople to convince you that their product is worth buying. I'm not saying that kombucha doesn't have health benefits. I'm saying that there are a total of, when I checked last time, 2 or 3 clinical trials with very low ends. Some of which were done in mice, others that have confounding variables that showed any level of efficacy. So yeah, like on paper, kombucha, full of like great probiotic bacteria, prebiotic, whatever, you know, the bacteria within kombucha and the yeast within kombucha, they make all sorts of great compounds. That doesn't necessarily mean that drinking it will improve your health. It makes sense that it could, but of course in science you have to prove it, right? You have to prove it. Yeah, if I recall correctly. Oh, actually, is that what that stands for? No, that's another acronym. Whatever. The microbiome stuff didn't deliver on the promises. Yeah, because salespeople are salespeople and they've kind of muddied the waters. Probiotic treatment does actually work. It's just you have to have a disease, right? Like babies with IBS, they get a probiotic treatment, they get probiotic medicine. But if you're out here and you're taking a probiotic because you think it'll help your health, you're doing so on faith. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm saying you are not acting with a position that is consistent with published research. But that's okay. You can have faith in stuff. That's fine. That's a part of being human. Sometimes you don't have enough information and you just trust. I think the common issue when it comes to supplement healthcare is that very often there isn't any rigorous study. Exactly. And if you look at the kombucha literature, there are so many papers about the health benefits of kombucha. If you are a naive person, and hopefully watching my channel will help you with this level of science literacy, right? If you go to Google Scholar and you look up kombucha health benefits, I think a lot of people would look at that page and go, wow, kombucha must be good for my health. There are so many, hundreds of thousands of papers, or at least tens of thousands of papers on the health benefits of kombucha. You start reading those papers and it's just, oh, this molecule that this bacteria from kombucha can make, no information about whether or not that bacteria actually makes that molecule, or whether or not that molecule is bioavailable to the human, or whether or not it fills a particular nutritional niche that's not already being filled. All of those things, I think a normal person would not really think about. But when you search kombucha clinical trials, you actually get like just a handful, and they're all very low-powered, iffy studies. So part of the channel is to help you see that scientists take our jobs. You know, we take our job. Do I count as a scientist anymore? I don't know. I'm not a practicing researcher. Anymore, but biologists, scientists, they take their jobs very, very seriously. You need to prove everything before you learn about something, right? Not only do you have to prove all the mechanism, you have to prove the effect, validity, stuff like that. If your microbiome works well, don't change it since it's all about homeostasis. Exactly. Like if you've got bacteria in your gut and you're fine and you don't have what's called dysbiosis, you're likely fine. And just because you introduce a bunch of bacteria to your stomach, acid doesn't necessarily mean that they will colonize the stomach environment. That's like a really big issue with microbiome stuff, is that I think it's not... It might have to do more with how your immune system is rigged than the kinds of food that you eat. The more I read into the microbiome and its role in immunology, and the role of immunology in the microbiome. Why did you pick a neutrophil over any other cells for your name and profile picture? That's a good question. So It's not really a great. So this requires to go back into my history. So like half a decade ago, I had an idea for Cells at Work, and then Cells at Work came out, and then I gave up because Cells at Work was Cells at Work, and there's no way that an indie grad student YouTuber was going to make Cells at Work better than Cells at Work. And so one of the characters that Toxo had drawn for that animation project was this little neutrophil guy, and since we already had the asset, and since he was cute, I decided to use that and make that into a VTuber, which Toxo did as well. I remember something about microbiome and cancer, but don't think that ever came to fruition. That's kind of a broad statement. It's kind of early to judge the microbiome's role in anything, to be honest. We know that it's important. We don't know how and to what extent and where it's important. So in terms of microbiome and cancer, I wouldn't rule it out. Microbiome research is still very new. What did you research? I researched neural immunology. So for a long time, the brain was thought to be geez, what is it called? I'm forgetting. I give this spiel somewhat regularly, which I'm very happy to do because I loved what I researched. The brain and the nervous system was considered to be immune privileged because neurons don't replicate, and so it'd be really bad if your immune system started destroying everything in the nervous system. So it was thought for a very long time that the brain and neurons didn't make immune proteins, but it turns out that they actually do. And when they make those immune proteins, they actually have neurological function. My favorite example is that the weapon that the immune system uses to blow up holes in bacteria, those same proteins are made by neurons to mark the synapses that need trimming. So you can kind of imagine neurons getting haircuts to trim the excess electrical connections that they share with their neighbors. I loved studying that in grad school. I think it's actually a core part of what seems to be a rise in anti-intellectualism. Research is simply not easily accessible or approachable for a lot of people. Yeah, and you have to want to do it, right? Like, I have no disillusion that my style of teaching will not translate to the broader American public. But I think that if we could have a new science, right? Because in America, we had something called Common Core Math, which kind of redid how we did math to be more intuitive and number sensey rather than brute force. I don't know if that's currently working. I'm invested in education, not only in university, but also for K through 12 as well. Troy, if you are an American, I would love to hear a little bit about what you know about Common Core, because that's been controversial. Like the 19 of you that are here and like the 30 of you that were here all, for the entire stream, I have no disillusion that you are on the more curious side, perhaps, or just like listening to me yap. I don't really know. But I think there's a way to do this for high schoolers. Like, I think this is too hard to roll out in middle school. But like, you could do journal club in high school. It wouldn't be that hard to train like a high school teacher to do it. And you could do it with nutrition, because nutrition is the easiest science to rip apart. I mean, nutritionists, they do good work. The research, it's important. But each individual nutrition study is really easy to criticize, because nutrition research is really, really hard, right? It's hard to do research in nutrition. It seems like every other day we're either hearing that coffee is good for you, or coffee gives you cancer, or coffee cures diabetes, or coffee does this or that. Why is it that we hear about coffee so often? It's because nutrition is very hard to control. And that's like baby level criticism. You can easily tear apart a nutrition paper, and that would be a good experience for a high schooler, right? That's fun, because it's fun to feel like you are better than people. That's toxic. That's super toxic. It feels good to find weaknesses. That's the less toxic way of saying that, right? It feels good to look at a work that an adult did and be like, I could improve that. Now, the trick is to also instill with them not only that feeling of, ooh, I am empowered, intellectually empowered to think critically, but I also need to have my ego in check. So they should do both. They should start off with easy papers to criticize, like bad papers in nutrition, and they should graduate to something a little trickier. And it should be hard, and they should get challenged, because critical thinking is hard. Everybody, you go on the internet, everybody says, oh, we need to be teaching critical thinking in schools. How do you do that? Nobody has an answer. You see all this complaining on Reddit, none of them contributing intellectually about how to improve education in America. But I think Journal Club is one way you could do it. Because I think like taking logic classes, because part of my curriculum when I was growing up was taking formal logic, modus ponens, ergo, proctor hoc, all these Latin terms, if then, contrapositive, inverse statements. And I think those were very useful for people who would then do math and programming because that just appeals to them more. For everybody else, I think criticizing a nutrition study would work better. So Common Core is more of a series of standards which has some serious issues, but we are seeing in mathematics is that math is no longer being taught as a series of steps, but more of underlying. As a result, we're seeing improvements in overall math skills. That's great. That's kind of what I was curious about, because there were issues in the initial data collection with when Common Core was first rolled out. At first, they saw that either, I believe, performance was either not improving or getting worse. And that's just because it was hard to teach the teachers how to do Common Core math. But I think after a couple of years, I am sympathetic to Common Core as an idea. Like, even though parents might not be able to help their children with their math homework because they do math funny, if it does turn out to improve their number sense, that can only be good. As a high schooler myself, this will be funny, very funny. In terms of having the opportunity to criticize a paper, I think you should. I think that instead of, like, I don't know, but then you have to cut some things too, right? Like in a high school curriculum, you can't just keep on adding more things without taking stuff out. And I think geology is important too, just because geology, just because I didn't like geology doesn't mean I don't think it's not important, but it gets kind of hard. Maybe you can skip. Oh no, I don't want to cut plants out of the biology curriculum. Like, I don't know, it's just really hard to find out what you should cut from an AP Bio curriculum. I do have an AP Bio textbook nearby. You could look at the curriculum and see what I would cut in favor of critical thinking. By out here spitting 86 assembly. I prefer cellular machines over real ones. Rock lickers rise up, true. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because again, I'm very sympathetic to all teachers of all disciplines. Like, I do think we need art. I do think we need theater and history, because these are all important aspects of being a fully formed human being. Like, you can specialize in undergrad, for sure, but there's a reason why most universities demand that you take courses that are outside of your specialty. And I hear a lot of like very tunnel vision people complain that, oh, why am I being made to take English? Why am I being made to take history? You don't know what you need. You don't know what you don't know, first. You also don't know what you will then need in the future. I minored in writing. I didn't know why. I liked writing. And now I use it every day for not only my job to teach students how to write scientifically, but also to do Find the Neutrophil. So I'm very happy that I picked up writing skills. And as, you know, if you want to go like hardcore STEM, all I want to do is like make programs, you still have to pick up some other skills like writing and technical communication, or you might not be very pleasant to work with. My school system doesn't have geology, which saddens my inner paleontologist. That's a bummer. Yeah, geology was mandatory. We called it earth science in our curriculum. That's a bummer, because even though things like learning this kind of rock didn't feel super important to me, it does give you an idea of like our origin as a species, which I think is sort of spiritual importance. Now again, whether or not you believe in supernatural origins, that can be in parallel with a scientific worldview. But like learning about geologic time and learning about how we know how old, because like the thing is that I read a book about Darwin's life. Surprise. Love reading about Darwin to prepare for my Darwin stream, which was the second stream I ever did. And if I didn't have earth science background, thinking through some of how paleontology became biology would have been a lot harder. And so like those answers to the spiritual questions that people can take advantage of, right? People offering alternate metaphysical frameworks that might come bundled with other questionable beliefs. If you don't have a background or an answer for how we rationally came to be on a spiritual level, you might find that sort of spiritual absolution somewhere else, which could be kind of rough. In my AP Bio, we had case study days. I would have loved Journal Club too. What is case study days? I never had that, and I'd be curious to see whether or not Journal Club could replace that. Were I to make serious changes, I would introduce common sense as an independent class somewhere in 9th to 10th. I wonder what class, how that would look like. Don't cut botany, please, says the green guy who uses the word dormancy. Yeah, botany was, because botany was rolled up into the plant segment of AP Biology for me. And I loved thinking that I could be a botany guy. Because my AP Bio teacher was like this super old British man who had a deep love for gardening and flowers, and he would tell us fun flower facts and show us how to identify certain flowers. And I was like, this guy's so cool. I love this guy. He's so cool. I wish I could be him. But then when I tried to learn about botany on my own, I found that it didn't ignite the same level of passion as I have for good old cell and molecular biology. Analysis of science historical papers and the like. I could see the appeal for historical papers because those are important for developing problem-solving tools. Because, you know, there's an argument that we should just read modern stuff, but it's actually really helpful to read classical biology papers as well, because you get a sense for how people with no tools and no technologies learn to solve tough problems. And while we have many more tools these days, because the problems that we're getting to solve are harder and harder, you're still going to have to operate in a space where there are essentially no tools to solve very hard problems. And to learn how really smart people tackled that ambiguity is a good mental exercise. I hated earth science because it was just a rehash of grade school science for the kids who thought they were slow. Oh, that's a shame. I mean, I did learn repeat stuff between high school earth science. Actually, did I learn earth science in high school? I think maybe my final earth science class was in middle school. No, I don't know. It's interesting to think about. I don't know how you do biology or geology in the US, but we have 12 out of the 20 exams entirely reliant on critical thinking. For high school? They basically gave us data and tell us to deduce what happened. That's what I would want to implement in the US, honestly. That's not how I learned it. Maybe they've changed the curriculum since then. Common sense could be a reasoning skepticism class, but I would start much earlier. The problem with that is defining common sense becomes hard. Because that's more of a sociological, psychological question and can be culturally defined, which would be tough. Because science is, I think, a little cleaner, that might make a little more sense to me. I would have to know more about how you would implement that, I think. The teacher would give us a case study to talk about and give real-life examples of our topics. Like once we did toxins as an example of irreversible binding. Yeah, in AP Bio, that's good. I like that approach. I think that would work. I think we use the French system because colonization. Oh, interesting. Yeah, that would do well. In the US, when I was a high schooler, it was brute force memorization. Up until undergraduate, you could start the process of thinking critically. And still, we managed to pump out some very talented biologists, but I think that's because in the US, I kind of feel like, I don't know, I'm proud to be an American. We're just chatting right now, Kevin. I'm very proud to be an American. I think the best universities are in the US. Maybe that's partly because capitalism go burr. and you know, the appeal of the US is certainly very high in that regard. There's a lot of money. But that doesn't necessarily trickle down to K through 12, which is a shame. Which is why, like, it's nice to have the environment where, because the US is attractive to graduate students from overseas, we can kind of swallow them up and have our big intellectual powerhouses and international collaboration hubs in the US. I'm not saying other places don't do that as well, but I am uniquely proud, I think, or unusually proud of being an American when I think about our education here. Now, am I proud of student debt? No. But I am proud of the work that we do in academic systems. Where's the stream rules? I think I did forget to do them. Yeah. Basically, don't trauma dump and don't ask me for medical advice. And keep it relatively say-so and on topic, right? Don't just ask me about biology, about some random bacteria that I'm not talking about. Pretty simple rules. In my country, there are no plain memorization exams. You always have to apply. Yeah, I think there's a balance, right? There's a balance for sure. I think the perfect system would be half-half. Half, you have to know complicated pathways, but maybe you don't have to know all the details. But just as a starting metric of like, you need to know how biology works before you can critically think about it. And then the other half being, now we give you data and you figure it out. That would be my ideal US education for biology, at least. Biology felt glossed over at K through 12 and is a favorite subject of mine. Yeah. I think university was a really eye-opening experience for me as a biology student, because you don't even know how much is simplified in K through 12. Like, the model of, a virus invades the host and makes copies, and then the host dies, and then you leave K through 12 and you're like, I guess that's all what viruses do. But then when you start learning about like rabies, it's like, rabies infects the cell and it makes a viral factory, and it grows this grotesque factory. I did a stream on this, by the way, the rabies viral factory. It assembles this production zone where it concentrates its proteins, and it gets so big, and it's attached to the ER and the protein synthesis machinery, and it grows bigger and bigger to the point where it kind of shoves the nucleus out of the way, and it's this horrifying like internal growth that eventually kills the cell and spreads the rabies virus elsewhere. Like, those interesting details, not in K through 12, unfortunately. The problem with education here is that there are so many subjects, 5 literary and 3 scientific. This is for the physics branch that I did. Interesting. 13 subjects here. It's been too long since I've been a high school student, but I remember there wasn't a lot that I would have cut. I think every piece of my education was valuable, even if at the time I didn't think it was as such. I think like local philosophy is important for the culture of education, because like, as much as I want to believe in self-determination, and of course self-determination is a big factor in determining your academic success, like the school that I went to a super high achieving, like little freaking Einstein school for future Google engineers kind of situation. Not to say that I performed very well there. Long-term chatters know that I was like surviving but not thriving in that environment. I mean, I think that's kind of rude. That kind of plays down. I did well, but not very well. Not near the top at all, but not near the bottom at all either. And the philosophy of this like high-performing school is, well, we as a school are going to look very good the more biology students become doctors. So what we're going to do is we are going to focus on the biology that is relevant for doctors. So what actually happened in our AP biology class is the entire semester of AP biology was focused specifically on cell and molecular biology, and then everything having to do with animals and plants. We were not taught any of that. We were just told to read the textbook, because if you want to be a doctor, then you don't need to learn about plant biology, which is sad for people that want to do plant biology. So much of your lineage comes from sort of the environment that you are in. And I'm sure that's not how AP biology is taught at every high school in the US. But since our high school was like a bunch of little nerds who wanted to go to med school, that's how that biology class shook up. The fact is that US education needs a ground-up rework as it is. Historically, it's designed to create good factory line workers. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. It really doesn't feel like it has to be that way, just because... I mean, it's really not fair. By the time they get to me, they're mostly, like, baked, like, fully baked in terms of their background knowledge of just facts, like not deeper than that, but just facts. But once they're allowed to start critically thinking, that's when the fun actually can start. I remember feeling really unsatisfied with Mendelian genetics in grade school, but in grade school? Huh? When did they start teaching grade schoolers Mendelian genetics? That's fascinating. But when I learned about advanced genetics and independent study, it suddenly made sense. Yeah, because Mendelian genetics, there are only a couple of, just a small handful of genes that are inherited in a Mendelian fashion. The majority are not. They're multi-allelic, polyallelic, whatever you want to call it. One gene, many features, one gene. And just like being able to leave AP Bio and not learning about those other things, just not satisfying. I agree. Just the Punnett square. I didn't do the Punnett square in grade school, so my guess is that you are younger than me, just as a guess. Yeah, when did they start teaching Mendelian genetics in grade school? I definitely don't remember learning that at that early of an age. That's awesome. I remember some culture shock when I was recently informed that they started to talk about PCR in grade school as well. I was like, really? PCR? I had to wait until college to learn about PCR. That's like bonkers. Not college, high school. Fancy pants bored learning about Mendelian genetics. Some topics I really felt like, as a nerd myself, tried and true, I felt like it was frustrating to not know more, just because it felt like there was a question that needed answers. Whereas I didn't feel that for things like history. For history, I appreciate it now that I'm not getting graded on history. I actually do like reading quite a lot about history nowadays. But back then I was like, oh god, it's just memorization, but there's no like coherent logic. It's just things happened in some order. Tough. 5th or 6th grade, according to New York standards anyways. Oh, very interesting. Yeah, New York. Yeah, that's a place for education, let me tell you what. Very, very competitive high schools in New York have quite the reputation. I think that's kind of an interesting question to ask chat, right? According to my analytics, a good chunk of you are at the age where you would be starting to think about children. I don't know if children are in my future, but I've thought about this a lot because there are these like pressure cooker high schools back in New York, right? Pressure cooker high schools where it's like the Hunger Games, where you get the entire population of middle schoolers in New York, the boroughs of New York, right? The 5 boroughs, and you get them to take this entrance exam. And depending on how high they score and where they rank these specialized schools, they can go to a school for free that is very, very good and very, very well funded. I think there are like 12 of them in New York. And so if you get in, they are as good as some of the best private schools in the country, but you don't have to pay a cent, which is a great equalizer in terms of income, right? No matter what, the more money you have, the more privilege you have. That's just fact. That's not worth arguing. And these schools, all you have to do is test in to get in. No income requirement, very cheap to go to. You get your public transportation subsidized so that you can come to school for free. Lunch is also free. And like that idea of like testing into these free schools that not only guarantees you like some relative amount of physical bullying safety, right? Because you're at a school full of high achievers and generally the nerds are not going to be beating you up generally. But like putting that on a child, I think, is an interesting conundrum, because that school, anecdotally, has ruined a couple lives. For sure. Right. From what I understand about them anyway, right? Like, imagine telling a 13-year-old, like, if you get in to these high schools, then your academic future is much more secure because these schools have like pedigrees and you don't have to pay for them. It would take a burden off of your family. And the idea of subjecting a 13-year-old to that level of thinking about the future is really tough. And being in the environment where high achievement is the norm is also kind of tough. I went to one of these schools, not necessarily like one of them in New York, but I also went to something similar where like you had to test through this like Hunger Games situation where you're competing against every other middle schooler in the state for a spot in one of these prestigious free public schools. And like the intellectual scars are deep. So I'm kind of curious, chat, if like how you would approach your imaginary 13-year-old with this idea of like testing into one of these amazing public schools. It would be better if the other schools are brought to the higher level. It's so messy because these schools, like the idea of like brain drain, where you are purposely scalping the best performers to go to these specialized nuclei of study. There's certainly an opinion to have on whether or not that is good for education as a whole, or whether or not you're letting the people who are privileged get ahead. But my argument against that is there are free programs where you can do test prep for free that are sponsored by the government. Are rich people going to be at a higher advantage of getting in? Of course, rich people have an advantage of everything. It's just an omnipotent buff, except maybe to, I don't know, deep life satisfaction, but that's not necessarily even true, right? The more money you have, the more test prep you can afford, etc. But there are test prep options which empowers lower income people to take their shot too, which is why I love that idea for ambitious kids. But I was not an ambitious kid. I just wanted to make my parents happy. I had no like real intellectual ambition of my own. I just wanted to do a good job, and I felt like that was a rough environment to be in then. Yeah, Inc. Another chatter brought that up. The U.S. standards are for creating laborers. It's really tough to rework. You should do more socialism like U.S. Most university spots are held by the government and you only pay insurance. Hunger Games aren't so bad. Yeah, I think because I have a bias and I am where I am because of my long, privileged, pedigreed education, that I think that if you can hack it in one of these schools, that it is a very big benefit. And it's opportunity for the very ambitious, but it's also a recipe for burnout as a human being. I think there's something interesting to be said about how these things set up kids to deal with failure and the expectation of success. There are a lot of people who get skill checked in college. They go, oh, I was like valedictorian in high school. I never had to study. I'm one of these like gifted kids that don't have to work hard. I never had that stage in my life because of these like genius schools. I was busting my ass in school since like elementary school, like trying to get into these like magnet programs, and the magnet programs became specialized high schools, and specialized high schools became good universities, etc., etc. And when you work that hard at school and you're not allowed to feel smart because your peers are so much better than you, it wears. But the advantage is that you never have the expectation that you're good at anything. You get your ego like crushed, which is why like leaving the school system and just doing my job has been so good for my self-esteem. I think I'm a pretty good teacher. I think I'm a pretty good content creator. It's taken a long time for me to be able to compliment myself, and that's only because I escaped the super competitive environment. I never bothered to apply to such a school even though I had an opportunity because I wanted to stay in the same school as my friends. Yeah, that's the other thing, is that like I was privileged in the sense that, again, very pedigreed kind of background, all public school though. Like my parents hustled to go to good school districts where I could go attend for free a great public school. And a lot of my public school friends ended up in a lot of this. So I've also been privileged socially, right? Where like I've had this cohort of people and I've never been at a situation where I was uncomfortable socially because I always had people that I knew from my previous trainings, except for graduate school. That was the first time I was thrown completely in a new arena and had to fend for myself, and it was rough. I've told the story many times on stream, but being in a room full of strangers, I had like a not a nervous breakdown, but I had to like take so many bathroom breaks during my interview week because I felt like unsafe. Like there was nobody I could fall back on to have a normal conversation. I had to pitch myself as a new person. I didn't have the advantage of knowing people beforehand, which was shocking. Very privileged up until that point. The skill of making friends with people that you have no connections with, I just never had to develop that, and graduate school was a wake-up call in that regard. You guys have so many educational options. That's good. It's options, that is true, but again, it's still privilege. Not only do you have to have a life situation where you can study for these entrance exams, like imagine people with no money, you know, high school students or like middle school students that might have to help their parents earn money, who might come home to unstable family environments, who might not be able to study at night. I was fortunate enough to be in a family environment where I could use my extra time to just grind and work as hard as I could to get into these schools. So it's more like there are options for those that are in a position to take advantage of them. Ideally, of course, you know, a little bit of socialism would maybe help more people get those opportunities, because having worked with like underprivileged students, some of them are very, very ambitious, very, very bright and hardworking, but maybe just didn't come from a background where they were allowed to express that level of raw potential. That is an insanely hot take. Which one? Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to imply that everybody is suited for like an academic lifestyle. It's a value that my parents have put upon to me, that like basically from a very young age, my parents equated education with stability. They're like, obviously education is not for everybody. You know, we still need people in trades. That's not going away anytime soon. And we still need people who do non-academic things. But in terms of like the way that I was brought up, it was like education equals you don't starve. And like that also like messed me up mentally for a long time, because every failure ended up like chipping away at my confidence at being able to provide for myself. There was actually a conversation that I had with one of my best friends back in undergrad. As he was graduating, I was like, you know, if I graduate school and I can't find a job, can I crash on your couch? Like, they instilled in me like a deep insecurity about my own employment opportunities if I didn't like frag out in school. Now, rich people go to private unis, which have a bad rep, since smart people go to public ones as a first choice. I think that might be maybe a more international phenomenon, because in the US, there are good private and good public. And it kind of depends on which institution you go to. I think it'd be better if education tries to help students discover and develop the talents they have. I think that's why classes like woodworking and mechanics are super important. Yeah, that's why I wouldn't cut them at all from K through 12. Like, not everybody is suited to be in academia or have like a high academic job. And I was gonna say like high achieving. That's not even true, right? Like, a mechanic can achieve a lot more in a day than I can in a day. If a mechanic fixes a car, that's value added, whereas, you know, there are days where I just like try to make code work and it's arguable how useful that is. But I think like in order for that model to work, oh my god, there are these schools that I just learned about where the class size is like 1. Isn't that crazy? There are these schools that I heard of when I was applying to jobs in my area where the class size is 1. The student teacher ratio is 1. So in that like vision, Troy, that you have of like school being able to help develop students individually, I think that can only be realistically achieved with an insane teacher-student ratio. because I don't know how you do it with US class sizes the way they are, like up to 30 students. 30, I think 34 was the max where I was going. Like, I don't know, like you're just burning the lifeblood of teachers unless you have a better ratio. Yeah, one teacher per student, and I did apply because the money was really good and the benefits were really good. Because I think these were they were private academies specifically built and funded by the uber rich to teach their kids. It's a rich get richer kind of thing. And as I was applying, I was like, this goes against my very like education for all beliefs. But at the same time, in the area that I live in currently, I needed to make rent. I was like, you know, I have principles, but I am willing to sell out if I can't afford to feed myself. My class is 1 to 22 this upcoming year. That's really tough. That's so tough. Like, I had, at my university, the highest ratio I had was 1 to 18, and it was miserable. It was really hard to keep up 1 to 18, and I only teach one class. A ratio of 1 to 1 sounds like a waste of resources and sounds very expensive. Rich people in America have a lot of resources to waste, so, you know, let them contribute. Let them put money into circulation and get the economy going, right? Canadian chiming in, elder millennial. Excelled all through public high school and bachelor's, but yeah, rough home environment. That made grinding from home difficult. Nothing prepared me for grad school. Yeah. That's why, like, the, specialized high school system in New York, I love the idea. I don't know if it's right for everybody. I will say that I have immensely benefited from going, but I know that it could destroy people. Especially it's so young. Like, you're 13, you don't know what you want to do with your life. But I think the economic reality is that, like, the higher paying jobs, let me correct that. There are higher paying jobs gated by education. Not all higher paying jobs are. Of course, you can get certified for something like cybersecurity and blow me out of the water by several magnitudes, right? If you want a cybersecurity job, you don't necessarily need a degree in cybersecurity. But the idea is that having a degree can open you up to better jobs than if you didn't. Which again isn't necessarily true at every stage. So that's why, like, I have complicated feelings about if I had a hypothetical child and forced them through this meat grinder of education. Because what if my child wants to be an artist, right? I think about that. Like, if I have an artist child, the first thing I would do would be to panic, because that's I think that's a very hard life to make a living as an artist. It's not impossible, of course, but it is a very difficult life. And of course, with AI becoming more popular, certainly a harder life incoming for people who want to make a living making art. But my condition would be, like, you would have to just make sure you are the best at what you do. It's like a little bit of toxicness maybe. But, like, I think in the economic reality, like, you have to work, you have to grind. There's no success without grinding. And if it's not like being put through the meat grinder, it has to be something equivalent. And that kind of sucks, and maybe that's why I shouldn't have children. It was a tough road, but ultimately the degrees help. Yeah, I think degrees are not guaranteed to make your life better, but they can if you leverage them correctly. I don't know what I would do if I had an artist child. I wish I could say that I unconditionally support them, but I don't know. Exactly, right? Like, I want to love a hypothetical child. And of course I would love them. Just because they say that they want to be an artist doesn't mean I wouldn't love them. But, like, if I had the money, I'd be like, oh, okay, so you want to do, like, animation? You are doing every summer at an animation camp. I'm sorry. Like, you can enjoy summer vacation later. Like, you could, not necessarily a whole summer, right? Like, 2 out of 3 months of your summer vacation, you have to go to animation camp if you want to be an animator. I'm not going to let you, like, you know, fumble, because the more fumbling you do, like, you know, I don't know, again, because maybe that's why I shouldn't be a parent, because I inherited some of this attitude of, like, you gotta grind to get success. It doesn't have to be in academia, but whatever you have to do, you have to make sure you're good at it, and then good enough to make money. And I would like to set up my child to be good enough to make money on whatever it is that they want to do. Opinions on AI art. I pay for all the art on my channel except for the art that Toxo makes, and I will pay Toxo in the form of a lavish feast, a lavish omakase sushi dinner bought by your membership money and your super chat money that all goes to an account specifically to splurge on a nice sushi dinner for her because she refuses me my money, and that's reasonable. We're partners. It's kind of weird if I like pay her, but a gift of sushi is certainly worth doing, I think. In terms of the quality, I think it's kind of soulless. You can get kind of good at sniffing out what's AI and what's not nowadays. Better than chance anyway. And so I think that AI art will decrease the overall quality pool because greedy people are going to greed and outsource to AI. And that is, I think, sad, because AI, I think it's harder for an AI artist to have a thesis in a picture. That's been my gripe with AI art, is that, you know, like, does AI art do things better than the average artist? Sure, I guess if you don't look too carefully, AI looks better. But in terms of like, what was the artist trying to say? If you ask that question about AI art, you end up with nothing. This is a picture of a woman. That's what the thesis of AI art is. Whereas like a human artist has an idea behind the thing that they want to make. And I argue that you can figure out if something is AI art or not if it has a thesis, if it moves you emotionally because a human made you emote. I think it's more likely to be human made than AI art. So I wouldn't judge based off of like objective image quality or hunt for like artifacts that come up with AI generation. If you just ask the question, what is this art piece trying to make me feel? I think you might find that AI art is really bad at doing that. It's like going to college for a liberal arts degree. I don't get it. I mean, like, you can leverage a liberal arts degree and work for like a nonprofit. I think it's a pretty normal route to go. And of course, if my child wanted to do that, again, I just have to make sure that they do it well, right? You know, it's one thing to get a degree in English and then do nothing with it. And it's another thing to get a degree in English and then use it on a resume to work at a nonprofit to do X, Y, and Z, right? As long as you are goal-oriented and are grinding, even an English degree can have merit. It's not as rosy as that because obviously, like, I'm making it seem a lot more simple than that, but like, it can work. It has worked. I've seen my colleagues who have gotten their degrees in English and all the meme liberal arts stuff that STEM people like to meme on and have jobs that either equate to my salary, are a little less than my salary, or excel at my salary. It's just, you know, marketing yourself, your pedigree, your work experience, connections. Unfortunately, all of that plays into a role as to how well you can leverage that degree. The catch is the average wage requires higher education. I am an electrician and earning the top 5 to 10 guys in my field. Now, compared to doctors, I'm in about the top 40. Yeah. You can certainly make a job, a life worth living and a sufficient income on many jobs that don't require a degree, but like being an electrician, that requires some not innovation, ambition, right? Like, in ways, academia takes a lot of the ambition and the self-started self-efficacy out of the equation. Like, if you wanted to be an electrician, you had to figure out how to be an electrician, right? That's not trivial. If you want to be a car mechanic, you don't just, you know, like go to car mechanic university, right? You have to like find out how to do that stuff and grind in your own way. Academia takes the grinding part and it makes it structured for you, gives you classes, gives you a diploma. But like the trades are no less grindy. You just have to grind in a different way. I'm too young to be thinking about the greater future. Just work hard. I know that there's this common belief that working hard doesn't see returns, especially in this new generation. I don't think that's true, obviously, because like I see undergraduate students who get jobs and they graduate and they get nice jobs. It still works. If you do well in academia, it can still work. You just have to try and try again. And like, if you fail, you just have to get up and try again. Like, that's all. I don't know. It's tough. I know you might be a little young, but like expect failure, I would say, and expect to try again. I think Toxo had some wise words regarding this. Is that like there's this general feeling, and not to like dunk on Gen Z, it's not your fault. You know, a lot of things happen to you that didn't happen to us, millennials, I mean. But there's, I think, a sense that like challenge is no longer expected, when in reality a lot of life is challenging. And I'll just kind of end it there. Challenges is a normal feature of life, and if you encounter challenge, it's okay to acknowledge that challenge makes you feel bad, but you can do it. I believe in you. I think real art will still have value. Computers that beat us at chess long ago, but we still have human chess tournaments. Exactly. Like there's something unique about the human experience. Not against AI art. I use it as tools to learn or inspiration. Yeah, I use it to like make little tokens for my D&D games, because it would be unsustainable to pay an artist every time I wanted to, you know, commission artwork of a creature. Like if I can't pay you for the work, like, you know, if I want something spicier than in kobold.png, and like my D&D campaign has a lot of like otherworldly, like void, eldritch horror kind of creature. Actually, it'd be right up Aiko's kind of alley in terms of aesthetic. But there's a lot that you can't, or like it would cost a lot to commission an artist for something that gets used one time for one session of a D&D campaign. I'm not against it as a tool. I am worried that too many people will use it as a tool to replace actual art. Use a student who used AI, mind you, 3rd grade, that's so sad. An artist child will kill me, and education needs to move someone towards a career so that they can support themselves. Yeah, I mean, again, if I had an artist child, I would sign them up for every animation class or drawing class. You know, you have to get good. That's it. And the way to get good is you just gotta do it. And if you burn out and you decide you don't want to draw anymore, okay, do something else with your life. If you feel like that is how that works. But the thing is that people who are suited to be artists, they'll burn out, but then they'll come back to it because they can't give it up. Just like me with making educational content. I've made educational content my whole life. I've only recently started to publish it. And like, I'll never give up, you know? I'll never give up making educational content because it's what I love to do. And if my child exhibits that level of grind, like if they burn out, maybe it's not like smooth sailing, they suffer, but they can't give up the pen. Okay, I'm on your side. I believe you. I believe you can do it, but you have to grind and you have to manage your burnout. Knowing how LLMs actually work has seriously damaged my opinion of a lot of content creators in the tech news space. Yeah, a lot of them already sound like AI videos. It's kind of a bummer. My wife has a bachelor's in modern language, and my mom did the same thing for history, and neither one of them uses their degree. Yeah, if you could convince people that getting a degree was a something that required things like ambition, organization, stuff like that, that might help. Although since I don't teach liberal arts people, I don't know if that's accurate. It's just a strategy that I thought of. Yeah, LLMs are pretty interesting, especially because I have to think about students potentially using them for lab reports. But the thing is that like, yeah, you can get an AI to write your science paper, and that's something that we explicitly rule out. And if you get caught, you will be punished because you should learn how to communicate. AI can't predict what actual facts are. You know, it doesn't know how to do math because it is a language model. And it certainly doesn't know what the current research is, nor can it critically think. So I think for now, worrying about students using LLMs for lab reports is a little above me right now. Yeah. AI art in paper, used in papers published in proper journals is pretty bad for psychom. Yeah, we've all seen that horrible picture. And if you haven't, just look up AI art science paper. It's pretty nasty. Yeah, having a good second degree definitely makes a lot of sense. Like, so much of innovation happens at the crossroads of interdisciplinary functions, like art. Like for me, making content, science communication is a fusion of science and liberal arts, which is my writing degree, right? And so if you can do art plus one more thing, like maybe programming, then you can do like modeling, and that'd be cool. Like 3D modeling, that might land you an industry job in like graphic tech somewhere, you know. That just gives you more opportunities and still lets you do what you want to do for a living. Kirkazot's new AI video, for instance, had a lot of questionable info. The code doesn't evolve or change itself, so jumping to super intelligence is hasty. I don't really know enough about AI to make a comment on that, unfortunately. Just that my students shouldn't be using them. They should learn to write. And that's another wonderful thing about teaching at my level, is that you get to watch students not know how to put together a topic sentence and then watch them write in a way that approximates a real scientist. I think that that is the most clear indication of what I call maturity of thought. Because as a high schooler, like, I thought I was hot shit. Ooh, cursed. Hopefully this late into the stream it won't get me demonetized. I thought I was hot stuff as a high schooler because I had done pretty well in my biology classes, although I was kind of okay overall. But I actually didn't realize until graduate school how clouded and unclean my thinking was. Graduate school is when I actually first started to develop a paradigm for logical thought. And I feel like people shouldn't have to wait that long. Like, some of y'all's that have had education not in the US that do like interpretation of data, I wish we had that in the US, because that is such a shame that I had to wait until graduate school to start figuring out how to think. Yeah. All right. My voice is getting a little raspy, so I think I will call it here. It's also getting late, and oh, Prakinji is so sweet. Her mealtime is at 5 p.m. and she's waited very patiently for me to finish yapping. It's okay that she gets fed a little later because her mealtime is quite variable, because she usually gets fed when I get home. So Prakinji is very patiently waiting on a table, looking at me, giving me the hungry eyes, and has not made a peep. So I think I will reward Prakinji's patience and feed her. So one more thing before I go, just 2 quick plugs. 1-year anniversary, and members only stream afterwards where you watch my first piece of content on this platform. The cat's name is Prakinji, spelled like this. Prakinji. Prakinji cells are neurons in the cerebellum, I believe. Cerebellum, I forget. But chat named her, and it's very, very cute. Yeah, so I will see you all on Sunday for my anniversary stream. And of course, if you know any science VTubers out there, our applications for VTheorem are open. And with that, I will see you all next time on Sunday. Bye, y'all. Bye.